Good evening. I'll call this meeting of the Housing Authority for the City of Salem for Monday, November 23rd, 2020 to order. If the recorder will please call the roll.
Ward 1, Guest Councilor Stapleton.
Here.
Commissioner Anderson.
Present.
Commissioner Nanke.
Here.
Commissioner Leung.
Here.
Commissioner Osick.
Here.
Chair Hoy.
Here.
Commissioner Nordyke.
Here.
Commissioner Lewis.
Here.
Thank you. And I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag. Thank you. Commissioner Lewis, are there any additions or deletions?
No.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Chair Hoy.
Yes.
We have an election of a vice chair to make.
Yes, we do. I did not think we were going to do that tonight.
Pick me.
Chair Hoy, you're welcome to delay that to the next meeting.
Thank you. I would like to do that. Do we need a motion to do that?
No.
Thank you. So we will delay the election of a vice chair to our next meeting. And I did not receive any public comment list, so I believe we have nobody signed up for public comment. Commissioner Lewis, the consent calendar?
Yes, I move passage of the consent calendar.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Lewis, seconded by Commissioner Anderson. Commissioner Lewis?
Yes. Tonight, the consent calendar only consists of the minutes from the October 26th Salem Housing Authority meeting, and then also one mention under resolutions, and that is agenda item 3.3A, application for grant funding from Collins Foundation to hire a case manager for the homeless rental assistance program.
Thank you. Any further discussion? The recorder will please call the roll for the vote.
Commissioner Lewis.
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson.
Aye.
Commissioner Nanke.
Aye.
Commissioner Leung.
Aye.
Commissioner Osick.
Aye.
Chair Hoy.
Aye.
Commissioner Nordyke.
Aye.
All right. Sorry, I did not realize that was the last vote. So it's unanimous, that passes. No public hearings. I see we have no special orders of business. Information report, item 6A, and I see that we have Ms. Utes here with us. Would you like to go over the program management report?
Sure.
Any highlights?
Good evening. I'm Nicole Yates. I'm the housing administrator for Salem, Oregon, for Salem Housing Authority. Tonight we have in the program management report, you'll see some photos of our newly renovated properties at Livingston and Northgate. Due to COVID-19, we're not able to celebrate the forthcoming of those getting completed and have a grand opening event or anything of that style. Plus, I wanted everybody to know that as soon as those units became available, they were immediately moved in that same day by the families that are residing in them today. But they did turn out beautiful and they're coming along nicely. We are completed with Livingston and Northgate now, and we're working on Meadowlark and Brush College still.
Those are really beautiful. That's a really great job. Those are really beautiful apartments for folks to live in. Thank you for doing that. I think that's really going to make a nice renovation for folks.
Thank you. It actually has, the curb appeal of the property has improved tremendously for the neighborhoods as well. And we've brought in a lot of great community space for individuals. Once COVID-19 is over and they can gather and have functions outside again, I think it'll be a great, wonderful place for children to grow up. So also tonight, I was going to discuss some of the grants that you'll see coming through. We do have quite a few grants that are in the process. We're applying rapidly, trying to get as much funding as possible for the homeless rental assistance program and many of our family self-sufficiency programs. We also do have one that'll be coming next month for operational loan costs through Oregon Housing and Community Services to stabilize Parkway Apartments, who is also has some debt that's starting to build from tenant rents that are not being paid at this time. I was asked to speak on the Wilson House tonight and to bring forth some information. I know there's been quite a few inquiries on this property that's located on Center Street next door to Jason Lee Manor. I've done some very preliminary research on this site. I do understand that they are closing operations and vacating the building, and residents are to be vacated by the middle of January. I do know they're working with Oregon Housing Community Services and other social service programs to ensure that those households can be properly placed in some other decent affordable housing. This is a residential care facility. It is not something that Salem Housing Authority has the expertise to walk in and try to take over immediately, but we are assessing the situation and seeing if this is something for a future development that maybe we can step in and assist with.
And how many units are there?
There's 50 units. This is a residential care facility style. As you know, we did take Redwood Crossings, which was also an assisted living facility, redesign it into permanent supportive housing. That wouldn't necessarily be the goal of this facility. If we looked for it in the future, we would seek information from others and the best use of that development. There's a lot of deferred maintenance on that site. Those are definitely things that we would want to do proper due diligence and ensure it's something that we can handle into the future. There's the 50 units have bathrooms and sinks. They're not fully designed out with kitchenettes or anything like that. They also have a common space shower, and then there's some common space on-site amenities as well.
Thank you. I really hope that we can maximize this community resource and not let it just fall by the wayside. So thank you for looking into that. Commissioner Anderson?
Thank you. A couple comments, Ms. Oots. The first one is, I looked at the pictures too of the renovated apartments and they look terrific. I've recently was helping somebody look for an apartment space in Portland or here, and I look at these and these look terrific. So you are to be congratulated on that. I did have some questions about your status report of the client profile. Down at the very bottom, you kind of get percentages of the different classes of people you serve. And if I read this correct, and you told me I did, it looks like 40% of the individuals that the Salem Housing Authority helps are children, and it looks like 32% are elderly, and it looks like 47% are disabled in some way. I'd like you to explain those three categories, but I first want to say that just the mere fact that 40% of the people we serve are children and 37% of the or 32% of the people we serve are elderly is just another indication of the value of the work that you and others are doing. Children and elderly are the two most vulnerable segments of our population, and we as a city need to do all we can to help them. So I really appreciate that. And if you could comment on both the children, the elderly, and then what disabled means under the statute, I'd appreciate it. Thanks.
Absolutely. So the various different programs, just to touch on the disabled, there's various different definitions to an individual who can qualify for a disability under each of those programs. That may not be just a physical disability, but that may be a mental disability as well as possibly a drug and alcohol treatment as well. So there is a 47% of our clientele that comes through the door does typically qualify for that designation. As you stated, 40% of our household members are children that reside either on our properties or in our voucher program is also why the Housing Authority is also looking all the time for additional funding sources to help with things such as Camp Rosenbaum, Shop with a Cop, and different program keeping our children safe and in livable, decent, safe and housing for them is very important. We're constantly improving our properties to provide them the space for them to be able to grow up and have a great environment to live in. And then our seniors, we ourselves at Salem Housing Authority have many senior facilities that we run and operate. And during this COVID-19 time, this has been very impactful on them. And we see that every day. They're missing their socialization. We're trying to keep the buildings safe, providing them with additional resources to keep the buildings clean. But many of our senior residents that reside in one of our Salem Housing Authority complexes usually come very early and as they qualify at 62 years of age, and they don't depart us unless for unfortunate reasons where they can't either care for themselves or worse if they are deceased. So they're a very important part of our agency is to help the seniors. That is also why we're also looking at the Wilson House as a future development and trying to keep that senior facility to help keep it going in our community in whatever capacity that we may be able to make it work.
Thank you. Are there other questions for Ms. Utes? Did you have further comments for us, Ms. Utes?
I don't.
All right. Well, seeing no other comments and seeing nothing else on our agenda, we are adjourned.
You're muted, Mr. Mayor.
I'll repeat myself. I want to call this meeting of the Salem City Council for November 23rd to order and ask the recorder to please call a roll.
Ward 1 Guest Counselor Stapleton,
I'm here.
Counselor Anderson,
Likewise.
Counselor Nanke,
I'm here.
Counselor Leung,
Here.
Counselor Osick,
Here.
Counselor Hoy,
Here.
Counselor Nordike,
Happy early Thanksgiving.
thank you, and Counselor Lewis,
Here.
Mayor Bennett.
Here. Councilor Hoy, any additions or deletions?
No.
Okay. Council City Manager comments. Any councilors have comments? Councilor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last Saturday, I was privileged to attend a Zoom meeting of the NAACP at their Freedom Fund banquet, and I know some other councilors were there as well. And I was honored to present welcoming remarks, opening remarks on behalf of the mayor and the city council and the city. It was a very interesting Zoom meeting with a fantastic speaker, the Reverend Dr. Skinner Williams, who gave us a very inspirational speech. But the thing that was most inspirational to me was the presentation of the scholarship awards. And there were about a half dozen that were presented to various people of color who are going to various colleges from Western to Chemeketa to Linfield to University of Oregon, and are being sponsored by the contributions from the NAACP that any one of us and anyone who's listening to this can contribute to those scholarship funds. And it's really was inspiring to hear these youth talk about what they wanted to do with their lives and how the NAACP scholarship fund was very helpful to them. So I was glad to be able to be there and to welcome them and honor them on behalf of the mayor and the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson, very much for doing that. Appreciate it. Councilor Nordike.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, folks, I have a few quick updates. One, I urge everyone as this holiday season unfolds, and a truly unique one at that, please do whatever you can to support local this year. Since June 2020, as some of you may know, the city has offered 3 different COVID-19 business grants. which has committed about $320,000 to more than 100 businesses and nonprofits to help them pay rent, payroll, inventory, and other expenses. I feel strongly that our local nonprofits and our local businesses help make Salem feel like Salem. They contribute to our local identity and our culture. And so for those of you who are out there who do have the financial means to support local and to do some holiday shopping, please do. And don't tell my parents, but I plan on getting them gift cards to some of their favorite local restaurants. Next, I want to update you folks on the wildfire relief efforts. Many of us know people who have family and friends who were born and raised in the canyon, who have homes in the canyon, and have other ties to the canyon. The deadline for people impacted by these wildfires to apply for FEMA assistance is Monday, November 30th. Y se habla español, se tiene recursos en español en su website. So you want to go to the FEMA website and apply if you have not already done so. They might be able to cover rent, home repairs, home replacement costs, and other disaster-related needs that you might not necessarily think of, but that can potentially include things like childcare and medical costs. Since the wildfire began, I have a lot of connections to the canyon. I grew up fishing, hiking, camping, and so on in the canyon. And so far, I have volunteered at the United Way Resource Hub, volunteered at the Gates Community Church of Christ, and I've recruited other volunteers and solicited donations for the area. I have also posted a video on my Salem City Councilor Facebook page to give people tips on how to work with insurance companies during this complex and unprecedented time that we find ourselves in. Recently, I toured the destroyed residences for many homeowners in the canyon, and I posted a photo gallery of that tour on my Facebook page. I encourage you again, if you have the financial means this season, please consider making a donation to the Santiam Canyon Wildlife Relief Effort. I posted some links to some good charities in the area who are dedicated to supporting this effort. So that's all that I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to remind folks that the only way we're going to get through this pandemic is if we all do our part. We have to wear our masks, wash our hands, social distance. Unfortunately, probably cancel traditional Thanksgiving, meet in small groups. But that's, if you support local business, if you want your kids to get back into school, if you want life to get back to normal, we have to go through a hardship right now to get there. And that's the only way we're ever going to get past this thing. So please do your part. And I know I'm doing my part every day. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Guest Councillor Stapleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight, I really wanted to talk about our warming shelters. The last couple of nights, I think last night they were open, but my days might be getting confused with COVID brain. But I received an email. I'm on their list to come down and volunteer. And I had the privilege of thinking about the risk that I wanted to put myself and my family at, whether or not I should go down and volunteer my time. And as the night went on, I got another email saying, well, we didn't get enough volunteers, so we're condensing the areas that we are going to open up, and of course, still needing volunteers. So it's really been weighing on me, just my own experience having, like I said, that privilege of not, just whether or not I'm going to go or whether or not I'm going to risk that to my family. I realize that that's a huge privilege, and but I feel like this is something that isn't sustainable for our city. Not only are we restricted in because of how close people can be with COVID, but also the people who traditionally help are really at high risk. So it's just something it's on my heart, and I feel like it's already an issue that's past urgent. So I just wanted to bring it here tonight, talk about it, maybe put it out there so other people don't maybe feel so alone about their own wrestling with whether or not to help and risk and all of that entails. I know you're not alone in that struggle, but also to let council members know that I think we need to be thinking about this and maybe trying to find a solution that's going to work. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Powers? Okay, very good. We'll move on then to proclamations. Begin with one. We'll be presenting to Hazel Patton, who's the Executive Director of the Salem Main Street Association. Whereas small businesses form the backbone of our local economy, generating jobs and improving the quality of life for residents. And whereas Small Business Saturday is a nationwide campaign to cultivate business for small merchants on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. And whereas 94% of consumers in the United States value the contributions small businesses make in their community. And whereas the city of Salem supports the efforts of local small businesses and recognizes the critical role they play in our community. And whereas Small Business Saturday will stimulate economic growth locally for small merchants by following in the tradition of Black Friday and Cyber Monday, two of the busiest shopping days of the year. Now, therefore, I, Chuck Bennett, Mayor of the City of Salem, do hereby proclaim November 28th, 2020 as Small Business Saturday and urge residents to support small, independently owned businesses and local merchants on this day and throughout the year. And I'm sending that again to Hazel Patton, Executive Director of Salem Main Street Association. There's Hazel.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is the most timely proclamation.
Hazel, I think we lost you.
Going ahead. Salem is fortunate to have so many small businesses. Oh, it says my internet connection is unstable.
It's going okay.
Is it going okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I get messages here that say it is not, but I am going to go ahead.
They do that. They do that to mess with us, Hazel. It's those big cyber.
I've been messed with and I don't like it. Don't like it. But anyway, we are so fortunate to have so many small businesses in our community. And a lot of them, of course, are focused in our downtown. In fact, you know, they are the lifeblood of our downtown. Without our small businesses, we just wouldn't have a downtown. But right now, they are struggling, and these are challenging times. And I think Councilor Nordicke said it very well. We need to step up and support our downtown businesses. And we grieve over the ones that we've lost, and we have lost some downtown businesses. But in March, from March on, we have gained 10 new businesses downtown. 10 folks have stepped up. 10 businesses have said, yes, we will come downtown. 2 of them are in our historic alleys, and that just thrills me to death. But they need our support. They need us to come down. They need us to buy their goods, and they need us to also buy their gift cards. Salem Main Street has been working with these businesses. We have distributed over 150 lights. So they're going to light up all their windows. Many of the businesses are going to put on displays. We're talking about diversity in our downtown, about the different ways that different cultural entities celebrate the same time as we celebrate our Christmas holiday. The other thing that we're doing is that we're painting the windows on Penny's store. And this is our South Salem High School and McNary High School students, and they are doing a wonderful job. Please go down and give them a little applause and tell them that we appreciate them very much. The other thing we're doing is that we will be in the Salem Center Mall, and we will be working with World Beat, and we will have some different cultural entities there that show the different ways that other people celebrate. So we're dressing up downtown. It's going to be beautiful, but we need people to come. We need you all to come. We need you all to shop. We need you all to eat in our restaurants and support our downtown. So thank you for your proclamation.
You bet. Thank you, Hazel, very much for the work you, the Main Street Association, and all of those business owners are putting into making this a really great holiday season. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to presentations by the Salem Police Foundation. There they are.
Hello.
Hi.
Mayor, councilors, my name is Cindy Lanasar, and I'm the president of the Salem Police Foundation. And I'm joined tonight by several of our board members for this presentation. I hope you can see them. Thank you for this time on the agenda. We are grateful for this time so that we can honor and recognize Chief Jerry Moore. Chief Moore is a homegrown kid, lifelong resident of Salem, locally growing up and attending Nary High School. After high school, he went to the Oregon College of Education, now known as Western Oregon University. After graduation, Chief Moore began his almost 44-year career in law enforcement at the Dallas Police Department in 1977, before moving back home and beginning his long-standing career with the Salem Police Department in 1979. During his career at Salem, he was assigned to all 5 divisions within the department, including assignments in patrol, investigations, drug, and vice, and was the creator of Salem's first police street crimes unit. In 2005, he ascended to the top of the ranks and was promoted as chief of police. Through his memberships in the Oregon Associations of Chiefs of Police, International Association of Chiefs of Police, Law Enforcement Executive Development, High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area Executive Board, and Hate Crimes Task Force, he built on his knowledge and experience of law enforcement issues and was using and brought best practice policing strategies and executed quality community policing efforts. During Chief's tenure, he continued his lifelong learning approach and graduated from the FBI National Academy, the Oregon Executives Development Institute, and our local Leadership Salem. He was heavily involved in our community, serving on many boards of directors, including Family Building Blocks, the Governor's Reentry Task Force, the State of Oregon Child Welfare Advisory Committee, Marion County Public Safety Coordinating Council, and Marion County Children and Families Commission. All of the aforementioned you might have already known. But you might not know is that Chief Moore's vision and efforts did not stop there. And it's because of his vision the Salem Police Foundation even exists. In 2009, Chief Moore reached out to Dick Withnell and began a discussion on what a foundation would look like, the attributes that it would have, and how it would aid our community. In 2010, the Salem Police Foundation was established, and founding board members included the late Senator Jackie Winters, David Withnell, Jerry Thompson, Clancy Tisden, Nathan Nottingham, John D. Hawkins, and Diane McLaren. This founding group wanted to provide community education on the efforts of the department, recognizing outstanding achievements of officers and raise needed financial assistance to provide training, equipment, and other resources to the department. The first foundation project was the construction of our K-9 officers training and agility course, which brought local businesses, citizens, and officers together to complete. 2020 marks the Foundation's 10-year anniversary, and we are still dedicated to our mission and vision to promote community support for the Salem Police Department and enhance public safety, supporting its members and all the citizens of our community. Over the recent years, we have purchased needed equipment to advance officer protection, such as trauma kits that have been used several times when officers have been shot in the line of duty protecting us here in Salem. We have also created the K-9 Officer Retirement Fund, purchased the mobile command center, and most recently purchased the TI simulator that was installed in our new facility. All of this, and dare I say, even the new facility itself and more, would not have happened if it were not have been for the vision, leadership, and passion of Jerry Moore. Therefore, it is with great gratitude that the Salem Police Foundation established the Jerry Moore Scholarship Fund in honor of his outstanding legacy. This scholarship will be awarded to any high school senior who intends on pursuing post-secondary education at any Oregon institution of higher learning and is a child of an active full-time Salem Police Department employee, retired Salem Police Department employee, 911 employee, or a participant in the Salem Police Department's youth programs, such as the Gladiators. The Gladiators, by the way, is a multi-year effort of mentoring officers with at-risk and homeless teens. The inaugural Jerry Moore Scholarship will be awarded this coming spring and applied to school year 2021. Chief, we are in your debt for your leadership, humility, passion, care, and dedication to quality policing, keeping Salem and all of our citizens safe. There's not enough time today to share all the amazing things that you have done. So please just know that there is nowhere like Salem, Oregon. And sir, that is in part because of you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Cindy. We all really appreciate your thoughts. Jerry, you want to say thank you or anything?
Well, that's amazing. Thank you to the foundation. That is a wonderful honor. And I guess I would tell you that this is one of those days that you never actually think is going to occur, but here it is. And as I thank the foundation, I also want to thank the city for providing me a wonderful job for over 40 years. Not many people are blessed with stability like that, and I very much appreciate that opportunity. I will tell you, it's been very special for me to serve the community where I was raised. Believe it or not, in this community, I'm probably known for much more than just being a police chief. I have more friends in this city than some of you will ever imagine, and the comments and the things they tell me reinforce the fact that I made the right career choice and serve this community well. And after everything is said and done, that's really what I'm going to fall back on and leave this job with. Sometimes when you have a job like I have, people forget this is my city too. Those that have taken the time or the opportunity to get to know me understand that very well. I hope that you all know that every action I took or decision I made was designed to make this department and this city a better place, to support all of you and to keep you safe. So I want to thank the foundation, but it's important that I also thank Mr. Powers, Mayor Bennett, all the city managers and councils that have come before all of you and that I've worked for. It's been a great experience, and I appreciate the opportunity to serve this city that I call home. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Chief. It's been totally our pleasure to both get to know you and to just appreciate the tremendous service you've given to this community. Hard for anyone ever, I think, to top what you've done for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Councilor Lewis?
Yeah, two quick comments. The one thing that was important to me over the last 20 years of being in Salem was the success that Chief Moore and the volunteers had with the No Meth Not in My neighborhood. to take on a challenge like that and be as successful as we have been, and we have not eradicated drug use, but we were very successful. And I compliment you on that. And I mention it because I didn't hear it mentioned. The other thing I want to say is I'm curious, is that the new office or are you somewhere else right now?
This is the new office. I get to sit in it for 3 weeks, so I'm a very lucky man. So thank you. It's a wonderful building, and I want to thank the community for that support because this means a great deal to our officers.
Oh, Councillor Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, congratulations. It's been a great career, and I wish you all the best in your retirement. Welcome to the club.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, Chief, again, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I hope you will invite us all over to see your new digs over there. It's good to see it all set up.
Thank you all. I very much appreciate the opportunity to serve you.
Okay. We'll move on then to the volunteer presentations. So I'll get them off to you. The Salem Spirit Awards recognizes individuals or groups that are constantly promoting Salem and are frequently behind efforts to improve our city. This evening, we honor the co-chairs of the Jerry Frank Salem Rotary Amphitheater Project, Barry Nelson and Ken Van Osdal. Barry and Ken share overall operational responsibility for the Jerry Frank Amphitheater Project, named in honor of our first citizen, Jerry Frank. Barry and Ken collaborate with the city, architects, and contractors at all stages of the build. They also raise revenue and lead a task force overseeing the completion of this impressive project, part of a long-term reclamation of a brownfield. It's located on the former Boise Cascade site, and the amphitheater is one of the final elements of the Riverfront Park Master Plan. It's inspired by the native Kalapuya open weave basket design. The amphitheater will provide the Willamette region with a performance venue that expands opportunities in which everyone can benefit from a new, broader range of cultural experiences, including but not limited to musical, theatrical, dance, and film. The new amphitheater will expand possibilities for students to perform outdoors in front of large audiences, as well as to gain developmental experiences that simply can't be attained in a school auditorium. Finally, the amphitheater will be an economic boost to the Salem area. Travel Salem estimates that will attract at least 100,400 visitors annually, with an economic impact of more than $7 million. Thank you, Barry and Ken, for all of your incredible efforts on behalf of the community. And also, just as an aside, it's also an opportunity to just remind the community that there are still funds being raised. There is right now a $100,000 matching challenge. If you're interested at all in donating to this really historic project here in Salem, please contact the Jerry Frank Salem Rotary Amphitheater. And it can be reached through Mr. Nelson or Mr. Van Osdal or any member of the Rotary Club here in town, and really appreciate your support for this project. And again, gentlemen, thank you very much. The second award I'd like to announce tonight is the Youth Achievement Award. This award is presented to a youth group, or youth group coordinator involved in a volunteer project benefiting the city. This year, we honor Sherry Bashaw from Blanchett Catholic and her work with students on the 1,000 Souls project. Blanchett's leadership class, taught by Ms. Bashaw, joined forces with City Youth Development 1,000 Souls Project and the annual shoe battle of the schools 4 years ago. Blanchett was the first private school in Salem to partner with the city, and they go above and beyond every year. Ms. Bashaw engages her students, staff, and families, churches, public and private schools, and local businesses to collect new or gently worn shoes, as well as new laces and socks for area youth in need. The goal for each battle is that all competing schools collectively bring at least 1,000 pairs of shoes. The past 3 years, Blanchett, with Ms. Bashaw leading the way, has met or exceeded that number on its own. Wow. The student population and resources may be small compared to larger public high schools, but their heart, determination, and hard work is mighty and leads the way in service. We're pleased and honored to present Ms. Bashaw with the Youth Achievement Award. She's to be commended for her leadership, resourcefulness, and community care. Thank you on behalf of the City of Salem. And finally, I want to announce the Distinguished Project Award. The Distinguished Project Award honors a group of volunteers who have worked together on a significant project. This year, we're honored to present the Distinguished Project Award to Salem Public Library volunteers. The city would like to recognize these dedicated volunteers for their amazing work earlier this year. In February, the Liberty Street location of the Salem Public Library closed for renovations. Library volunteers played a pivotal role in packing the 56,000 item adult nonfiction collection for storage. Between February 4 and 8, volunteers from multiple library departments contributed 51 hours of service to the packing project. All books and other items were removed from the shelves, transported onto carts to designated packing areas on the second and third floors, packed into storage boxes on pallets, and labeled with the beginning and ending call numbers to properly identify shelf locations. Wow. This group of dedicated volunteers helped pack a total of 45 pallets, holding 32 file-sized boxes each, generously donating their time, muscle, organizational skills, and bright smiles. With the volunteers' enthusiastic help, the majority of packing was completed not only on time, but ahead of schedule. Special recognition goes to Adult Services Librarian Alice McGugan, who planned and organized the volunteer packing project. Please join me in thanking the fantastic team of Salem Public Library volunteers. And that's our volunteer awards for this week. Congratulations to all of you, and thank you again for all the work you do on behalf of the City of Salem. It really can't be done without volunteers. Okay, I'm going to move on to public comment. I have 2 people signed up for public comment. Charles Sarles wants to comment on 3.3A. Chris Sarles. I'm sorry, Chris.
Not a problem.
Go ahead.
Excellent. Thank you, Mayor Bennett, and thank you, City Council members. Also a thank you to Peter Fernandez of the Public Works Department. I just want to thank you for your support of our water cooling project that we undertook. We started it over a year ago, and thanks to COVID, it came to a screeching halt until recently. But we are back on track and ready to have that fully underway here before the end of the year. It is a result of our business growing, which is a result of, thanks to you, of supporting us just a few years ago as we moved into this new facility where NORPAC used to be over on Madrona. Today, our business has been growing in some certain areas, and it required the investment of some significant new equipment. And one of those pieces is a water cooling tower. and that tower will help us reduce the output of water by 92%, from 64 million gallons down to about 7.5 million gallons. And what that does is take away the stress and strain on the water treatment system, as well as just yielding good, sustainable practices. And so with that, I wanted to just say thank you. When I look at what Salem has done since we have moved to our new facility, it's just proven to be a strong amount of collaboration across so many different departments, many that are here, many that aren't on the call tonight. But I'm thoroughly impressed, because as I talk to my friends in the north who are trying to operate businesses in other counties, there's nothing that even vaguely resembles the work that all of you do. And I personally thank you for your support. And I know that I remain one of those guys that you can call to action as you're looking to entice new businesses to the city. You know, put me on the front line, because I would like to be able to be there to share the stories of success that you guys have created time and time again. And I know it doesn't come without commitment and a lot of hard work. So for that, thank you. It only seemed fitting, you know, in this week for me to express that gratitude and Thanksgiving as we all head into a Thanksgiving week. So with that, thank you. And questions?
Yeah, Chris, again, your business is Oregon Fruit, right? One of our legacy industries, is that?
I apologize, Mayor. I did not introduce myself that way. It's Chris Sarles. I'm CEO of Oregon Fruit Products, and we're located at 3180 22nd Avenue Southeast.
Well, it's a corporation, a company that we are enormously proud of as part of our city's history and legacy. It's just, we're so glad you're here and that we've been able to be helpful along the way. Really darn.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Tom.
Thank you. Mr. Sarles, thank you very much. You happen to be, your plant is located in my ward, and I often ride my bike out of town that way, and I really appreciate how you've taken over for what was a vacant building and done a terrific job. And I also agree that not only has the city and its staff done a great job in collaborating with you, so have you. And I really appreciate it. And I have to tell you a COVID story. A couple of years ago on Thanksgiving, we went to Minneapolis. We're never going to go there. And my wife and I were in charge of making the cherry pie for Thanksgiving. And we went to the store, and there in Minneapolis on the shelf was Oregon Fruit cherries. And that's how we made our pie there. So thank you very much.
I love it. And thank you. And I failed to also say that, you know, with your support also as a team, we've grown our employment by over 10% since we've been in this location. And I look forward to sharing what we're going to do in the development out in front of our building to make it even that much more visually appealing.
Great. That's great. Councilor Hoy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Mr. Sarles, for coming down and speaking to this. And thank you for the positive feedback. We don't often get that as city councilors. And so I really appreciate it. I have to tell you very much. And I really appreciate this project and the collaboration that you've put in with the city and the staff to make this work. This is going to be a great, I think, as you stated, it's going to be great for your business. It's also going to be great for the city because it's going to, and the environment, because it's going to reduce the amount of water that you take out of the ground, the amount of water that goes into our wastewater system, and it's going to cool that water, which is really important. So I just really appreciate you highlighting this project, and I'm really glad we were able to do it. So thank you.
Thank you. It's with sincere appreciation. Thank you for letting me be here this evening.
Great. Thanks again. Okay, Dylan McDowell.
Hello, everyone. How are you tonight? Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Councilor. My name is Dylan McDowell. I'm chair of the Salem Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, or SPRAB. Tonight, I wanted to come more on my own behalf to share some concerns that came up at our last SPRAB meeting and make you aware of some of those in a timely manner, just knowing that these issues move quickly. I wanted to provide some comment related to unsheltered individuals in parks and some of the recent revelations we've heard about at our meetings. I recognize first off the complexity of this issue, and I really want to underscore the work that Council has done so far to address this. I just note that this is so complex and that there's no silver bullet. But really what we're hoping for from SPRAB is to be a part of the process, a part of the solution, and to work with you more closely, given our role as advocates for the park system. I want to note two of the concerns specifically that came up that our board was very concerned about. One was the safety risks for park staff and volunteers, and this impact on park users. There's been a pattern of increasing violence and threats towards staff. I believe you've been briefed on a lot of these, but there was a recent incident with a loaded handgun and pointed at a city parks employee, I should say. And then there's also the natural resource implications to our parks. So there's been about 200 trees removed at Cascade Gateway alone in the last month, and we still don't know the impact at Wallace. So in terms of SPRAB, we are working on a letter that we'll send outlining more of these concerns specifically next month, but also some of the ideas of how we'd like to be involved with the solution, because we recognize there's no silver bullet, as I mentioned, and it's a complex problem. At the beginning of this year, back in February, you received a letter from SPRAB regarding unsheltered individuals camping in the parks. And one of our requests was to keep us updated as this progresses. And I note that COVID and the pandemic has made it really hard in terms of keeping all the different bodies coordinated and making sure information goes out in a similar way. But as these solutions are considered, as there's opportunities for future task forces and coalitions, we believe that we should play a bigger role in that. And I encourage anyone, if you'd like more information on this, please go to the recording of the last SPRAB meeting. Toward the end is right where we had a lot of this conversation. But the final thing I wanted to do is really just to provide my face for all of you as an introduction as the chair of SPRAB. I've met many of you, but not all of you. And I really hope that you feel comfortable reaching out to me if there's any questions or other issues around parks, because we just love to increase that communication so we can all work on this together.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Hey, thank you very much, Mr. McDowell. Appreciate you coming down. All right, Councillor Hoy, the consent calendar.
I move approval of the consent calendar.
I'll second it.
Thank you. So we have item 3.1A, the November 9th, 2020 draft city council minutes. Item 3.1B, November 16th, 2020 draft city council work session minutes. Item 3.3A, an award of $50,000 wastewater pre-treatment grant to Oregon Fruit Products. Item 3.3B, commercial lease with Pringle Place LLC for storage of city supplies. Item 3.3C, amending the June 2019 agreement with the Rotary Club of Salem regarding construction of the Jerry Frank Salem Rotary Amphitheater. Item 3.3D, United States Department of Justice Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant for federal fiscal year 2020. Item 3.3E, intergovernmental agreement between the City of Salem and the State of Oregon granting use of the city rights-of-way for state telecommunications facilities. And that concludes the consent calendar.
Any discussion? Okay, if the recorder would please call a roll.
Councillor Nordyke?
Aye.
Councillor Lewis?
Aye.
Councillor Anderson?
Aye.
Councillor Nanke?
Aye.
Councillor Leung?
Aye.
Councillor Osick?
Aye.
Councillor Hoy?
Aye.
Mayor Bennett?
Aye. Okay, motion passes. We'll go then to public hearings. I'll have the recorder kind of set us up on this.
The City Council will now conduct a public hearing concerning the Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Partnership Program's Annual Performance and Evaluation Report. Individuals testifying must provide their name and address or ward. The hearing will begin with a staff presentation, and individuals testifying are limited to 3 minutes.
Shelley, are you first or?
Yes, sir, I am.
All right.
Good evening. I have a presentation, so I'll share my screen with you. Good evening, Mayor Bennett and council members. My name is Shelley Ahinger, and I'm the Urban Development Federal Programs Manager. Before you tonight is the 2019-2020 Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development requires the city to report on the performance of the projects and programs that used CDBG, or Community Development Block Grant, and Home Investment Partnership Funds during the period of July 1, 2019 and June 30, 2020. The Consolidated Annual Performance Report, or we refer to it as the CAPER, identifies all of those projects that received funding during this period of time of July 1 through June 30, 2020. It does not include programs that are still ongoing, which may have received some resources. We look for projects that meet the needs of individuals and families earning 80% or less of the median family income. For a family of 4 residing in Salem, the maximum income limit is $56,400. A very low income family of 4 would have a maximum household income of $35,300. This report is the 5th and final report for the 2015-2019 Consolidated Plan that is also was approved by Council. At the beginning of each fiscal year, the city prepares an annual action plan that informs HUD and citizens what goals and objectives the city intends to meet with the CDBG and home funding. At the end of the fiscal year, the city then prepares this CAPER document to illustrate the actual accomplishments achieved during that year. During the 2019-2020 program year, there were 3 priority funding goals. They're here before you as ending homelessness, expanding affordable housing, and addressing economic development. The total CDBG and home funds expended exceeded $650,000. As noted on this pie chart, the nearly $700,000 in federal resources focused on the community's plan to address homelessness through case management, rent assistance, subsistence payments, and supporting the Salem Warming Center network. Economic development activities also were part of the plan to look at small business development, micro business assistance, and to encourage entrepreneurship as part of the overall comprehensive plan to address persons who are on the lower wealth spectrum. Here's an example of one of the projects that was funded through these resources. This is the Mid-Willamette Valley Community Action Arches Program, and is the expansion of the Salem Day Center, Drop-In Center. It's located at 615 Commercial Street, and it primarily serves members of the homeless population who live on the street, as well as those who are in unstable housing situations who are in need of additional assistance. The expanded facility has a commercial kitchen for hot meals, a food pantry for persons who are in need of food, showers, expanded office space for case management, and a mail center for persons needing an address so that they can get their mail delivered to a stable location. Ending homelessness, as shown, was the primary goal for this particular year. Victims of domestic violence, shelter care and management, utility deposits are some of the things that met the needs of 3,347 individuals in the city of Salem. This exceeded the projected goal of 2,500 and exceeded the number of persons assisted our last reporting period. The 2019 Warming Center numbers are not included in this report, but I think it's important for the community to know that the Warming Center, which we did help assist, was open for 72 nights in a row and a total of 89 nights for the duration. That's more than twice the number of activations when compared to the previous year when we assisted the warming center. So those resources are going into places that are the greatest need for the city. There were 6,386 guests at the warming center, and we activated when it's 32 degrees or below outside, projected to be. In January, the city led a team to help count the number of unsheltered persons in the city. That's called our point in time count. Those numbers help us to determine how we need to address homelessness. And the team for the city included our city manager, our homeless coordinator, staff from community development, and our urban development divisions. As you know, we received CDBG, our Community Development Block Grant, COVID-19 resources from the federal government. Those numbers are not included in the social service numbers, but I think it's important for our partners to know that we appreciate them helping with rent and mortgage assistance, also working with the Marion Polk Food Share to expand the Meals on Wheels program for seniors, and many other services to help persons in this extraordinary time. Many of the service providers have had to pivot, and they have done a wonderful job in doing so to meet the needs of our community. And I want to thank them for their work with our vulnerable populations. As far as expanding affordable housing, this is Cornerstone Project. I think a lot of people are familiar with it. It is located on Portland Road, and it received 2017 capital infusion from the HOME program. The 180 unit community provides shelter and supportive services to households with incomes at 60% or less of the median income. The federal funds were leveraged with URA and State of Oregon LIFT resources. This property will be in an affordability period, which means it will remain for persons with low to moderate income for 40 years. Our last area, I'm sorry, I do want to say one more thing about expanding affordable housing is that we have some ongoing activities. As Nicole was speaking earlier with the Housing Authority, Jason Lee Manor is attached to Wilson House, and we made a recent investment in preserving Jason Lee Manor. In addition to that, we've made some investments in West Care Veterans Housing, which is located off of Center Street. And we'll be making investments in some other properties, over 350 units in all. And we're also doing tenant-based rental assistance with the federal funds. And the numbers for these will be in our next report once they have completed the rehabilitation and construction. Our third area of focus was in promoting economic development. We had two organizations, Merit and Interface, who worked with small businesses and micro businesses with 5 individuals or less as employees to provide business development and technical assistance with those businesses. In addition to that, they helped start up businesses to work through their business plan to see if it was something that would be funded within the financial markets. We're really proud of the economic development activities that these organizations have done. They primarily focus on persons of Latinx descendancy, and as well as some African-American communities, startups. Next steps. The CAPER is to be submitted to the Department of Housing and Urban Development. They will review it and then will let us know whether or not they have any additional questions. as well as this, they will submit that report to Congress so that Congress can also know the wonderful job that we're doing in Salem. With that, I am through, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Let's see, folks. Anyone have any questions? Excellent job then.
Thank you.
I guess we will close the public hearing. I don't have anyone signed up for this public hearing, so I'll close the public hearing. And Councillor Hoy, do you have a motion on this?
I move we approve submittal of the 2019-2020 Program Year Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, CAPER, for the Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Fund Investment Partnership Programs to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Second by Leon. Okay. Anybody got any discussion here?
No, I think it's all been said.
We'll call the roll then.
Councillor Lewis?
Aye.
Councillor Anderson?
Aye.
Councillor Nanke?
Aye.
Councillor Leung?
Aye.
Councillor Ossick?
Aye.
Councillor Hoy?
Aye.
Councillor Nordyke?
Aye.
Mayor Bennett?
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Go to our next public hearing.
The City Council will now hold a public hearing for the purpose of reviewing the Planning Commission's decision for Comprehensive Plan Map Designation, Neighborhood Plan Change, Zone Change, Class 3 Site Plan Review, Class 1 Design Review, and Class 2 Adjustment Case number CPC NPCZC SPR ADJ DR 20-03 for property located at 905 and 925 Cottage Street Northeast. The criteria applicable to this application are SRC Chapter 64.025, 220.005, 250.005, and 265.005. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward the applicable criteria or other criteria which the person believes to apply to the decision. A failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue shall preclude appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. A similar failure to raise constitutional issues relating to proposed conditions of approval precludes an action for damages in circuit court. The hearing will be conducted with staff presentation first, followed by testimony from the following. The applicant is limited to 10 minutes. The appellant is limited to 10 minutes. Other interested parties are limited to 3 minutes. And the applicant's rebuttal is limited to 5 minutes. Thank you.
One question. What about neighborhood associations? Do they get any extra?
In this case, Mayor, the appellant is the neighborhood association, so they do not receive an additional 5 minutes for their.
Okay. Good then. Thank you.
And Mayor Bennett, we also have a speaker who's joined us late. Douglas Kuzmanoff is at the end on the roster. You don't see his name. It's in magic marker. If you could add his name, please.
Could you, I can't remember how Douglas spells his last name.
I'm going with Kuzmanoff. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, before we begin the staff presentation, I just want to take this opportunity to ask councilors if they've received any ex parte contacts, and if so, to disclose them.
See the council. Is anyone raising their hand and want to be recognized? Virginia, you can't have ex parte contact yet.
I just want to say, if it's all right, I just want to be really clear that I have attended the neighborhood associations, and I know I'm not a voting member, but I want to be on the up and up here. So just.
I will ask you on this, though, to be sure to make any comments you have during the public hearing portion in advance of us making a decision. You can't be party to that decision making yet. We look forward to it, but not yet.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Olivia.
Good evening. My name is Olivia Diaz. I am with the Planning Division. The case before you is to change the comprehensive plan, neighborhood plan, and zoning to multifamily with the appropriate development permits to convert the existing buildings to multifamily and other site improvements. I would like to enter the staff report, this presentation, and the additional comments received by the recorder into the record. The proposal consists of 9 applications, which include changing the comprehensive plan and zoning to a higher density residential, site plan review, and design review for multifamily development. Additionally, the applicant is requesting 4 zoning adjustments to the multifamily design standards. These adjustments are due to the site constraints, since the existing due to the location of the existing buildings and the need to make ADA accommodations and eliminate 2 design standards to allow the exterior of the buildings to remain untouched. The subject property is located on the northwest corner of D Street and Cottage and within the Grant Neighborhood Association. D Street is a collector, shown in orange on your screen. The property is in close proximity to Grant School and Park to the north, with Broadway mixed-use area shown at the top of the screen. The State of Oregon offices, Parish Middle School, North Salem High School are located to your southeast, and the new police facility to your southwest. The properties are planned single-family residential, and those properties to the north are the same, shown in yellow. The properties south of D Street are mostly multifamily, shown in brown, with some commercial and community service, the state offices, identified in green, red, and pink. The zoning map shows a similar picture as the comprehensive plan, with the single-family residential shown in yellow, multifamily shown in orange, commercial shown in pink and red near Liberty and Broadway, and then the State of Oregon offices are shown in blue in the Capitol Mall. Both properties are currently developed with a non-single-family residential use. The church is located on the corner, and just north of the church is the parsonage. So we have some 3D pictures of the church. This is looking north at the existing church. So the existing church is approximately 30 feet in height. And then looking west, you can see the parsonage just to the north of the church. So the first criteria to consider will be the comprehensive plan change and zone change from single family to multifamily. The subject property is currently used for a non-residential use, and the applicant is proposing to reuse the existing structures for multifamily residential. The properties are in close proximity to services such as commercial uses, state offices, schools, and parks. The properties are located in close proximity to the Chariot's core network. And lastly, the city is in need of affordable housing and multifamily housing. The appellant has suggested that the RM2 zone would be a better fit for the area and equal in zoning, in the zoning designation, which would allow a maximum of 9 units. The applicant is proposing a single-family high-rise zone, which is really just a higher density multifamily zone. It does not have a height limit. There is a condition of approval eliminating the height. The RH zone and the applicant's proposal includes 19 one-bedroom units. Under the RM2, the lesser zone density zone, there is not a limitation or standard regarding the number of bedrooms allowed in each dwelling unit. The majority of the multifamily projects in the city of Salem have at least 2 to 3 bedroom dwelling units when developed. Therefore, a typical multifamily 9-unit development would include 18 to 27 bedrooms on the subject property, greatly exceeding the number of rooms the residence that the property is proposed for. The condition number 1 limits the density to 19 units. The site plan and floor plan show that those units are all either single bedroom or studio units. The Planning Commission found that the number of bedrooms would be similar to the zone recommended by the appellant. In addition, conditions 1 through 4 limit the height, lot coverage, and outdoor storage consistent with the RM2 zone. So this is a map of the Chariots network. The subject property is served by 4 bus lines. The blue dash shows the core network, and then the red, the local service, and then there's bus stops shown in proximity to the subject property. The site plan review application meets all of the standards besides the 4 adjustments requested, which include the setback abutting a street for the ADA landing to get to the basement and to the upper stories, the common open space minimum dimension, the windows in habitable rooms and architectural details to eliminate the need to alter the exterior of the parsonage. The applicant did originally request an adjustment to the overall common open space, but submitted a new site plan at Planning Commission, converting the area shown in blue, which was previously parking, to open space, therefore meeting the standard. Due to the location of the property, parking is not required for this multifamily development due to the proximity to the Chariots lines. The adjustment was no longer needed and was removed from the proposal. So this is the elevation of the church. Like I said, it's 30 feet in height. The proposal is for 14 units within the church, and the minimal changes only include really the ADA landing. You can see on the bottom elevation. This is the parsonage, the elevations of the parsonage. Again, 5 units in the parsonage is being proposed. Minimal changes, mostly just the ADA landing to the exterior of the building. So we did receive comments and support from the Can-Do Central Area Neighborhood Development Organization. And at the time that I wrote this, there was 10 comments in support. I think I lost track at some point as they came in today. And then the Grant Neighborhood Association is the appellant, and there was at least 2 surrounding property owners in opposition to the proposal. Those comments are addressed in attachment 3, and additional comments can be in attachment 4. Staff recommends you affirm the Planning Commission decision subject to the recommended conditions of approval.
All right, thank you very much. We will have an opportunity to ask staff questions after we hear from the public on this. So I will begin with Mary Ann Spradlin. Mary Ann, if you would be aware you have 3 minutes.
Point of order, Mayor. I believe the order that was described was that the staff would give the report, and then the applicant, and then the appellant. And
I'm sorry. Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just going off my list here. So applicant Jennifer, are you going to go first?
Yeah, I'd like to raise a few points outside of our official time because these are procedural issues.
You have 10 minutes, Jennifer.
Before you start the time, I'd like to...
Just a minute. Dan, do we have to go longer than 10 minutes on the applicant?
Mr. Mayor, I believe she wants to raise essentially a point of order. So if it's procedural questions and comments she needs to make, yes, that's outside of the 10 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, if you'll confine it then to procedural questions, that's fine.
Okay. So first, I want to preface, my name is Jennifer Brager. I'm the attorney representing Dev Northwest, and my address is 121 Southwest Morrison Street, Suite 1850, Portland, Oregon, 97204. In the record before you, and from most of the council members' recollection, you'll recall that on June 22nd, 2020, the City Council had a public hearing about some funding related to Dev Northwest, the applicant here. Many commissioners spoke and council members spoke during that hearing and voiced their opinions, whether for or against or maybe not at all, related to this specific proposal and this land use application process that was already underway. So I want to ask that all members verify that they can make the decision tonight based on the standards and criteria before them and apply those standards free from bias. If the council members would be willing to affirm or that request, I would appreciate it.
Dan, how do you want to handle this?
Members of council aren't required to respond to that. You're welcome to if you'd like.
Anyone want to respond to that?
Just to reiterate what she said, though, she is correct. So you have to set aside any personal biases and make your decision based on the facts and criteria.
Yeah, I think we all understand that.
I have a comment.
Who are you?
I'm sorry. My name is Mark DeCourcy. I'm a member of the public. And since the written testimony was submitted only at 5 o'clock, and the council members have not had an opportunity to review the written testimony, that making a decision tonight would not be.
Mark, you're testifying. I'm going to ask you to kind of save that for when you get up to testify. I understand what you're saying, but
I strongly urge the council in regards to my comment to make an affirmative statement so that any decision you may make on this file is not questioned for purposes of bias. I can read into the record specific language from the testimony in that hearing if that would help, but
Ms. Brager, you've had your opportunity to raise a point of order. Please move on to your testimony.
I also have another point of order to raise, and I see a council member has his hand up.
Are you going to, I'm going to have you finish.
Okay. I would like if Councilor Leung is going to participate. She mentioned in that June 22nd, 2020 hearing that she had a potential conflict of interest and did not participate. And I have a series of questions that I would ask Councilor Leung to ensure that she does not have a potential conflict of interest here. I do not believe she has a potential conflict of interest for having participated in the IDA program, the Individual Development Account Program that Dev Northwest operates, that is a program established under state statute and is independently funded by that state statute and a legislatively authorized program, but would have a series of questions if she would be willing to answer those related to this potential conflict of interest and to, again, state for the record that there is no conflict of interest.
With respect, Ms. Brager, this isn't a time to examine and cross-examine members of council. If Councilor Leung feels she has a conflict or would like to explain a potential conflict or lack thereof, that is up to her.
Thank you.
You want to go ahead and testify?
All right.
Go ahead and introduce yourself.
As I said, my name is Jennifer Brager. My address is 121 Southwest Morrison Street, Suite 1850, Portland, Oregon. I am the attorney for Dev Northwest. The applicant joins us tonight along with members of the development team. On behalf of the applicant, I want to thank city staff for its professionalism and hard work in reviewing this application, particularly within the constraints imposed by COVID-19. As city staff has described, the applicant has applied for consolidated applications to utilize a 0.3-acre already developed site to transform the interior of an existing church building and single-family residence into multifamily housing. The applicant's submittal, including the October 6, 2020 letter it submitted to the Planning Commission and presentation to the Commission, resulting in a unanimous vote in support, explains the lengths to which Dev Northwest has gone to accommodate the neighborhood associations and early city council comments that were expressly opposed to a zone change that would allow an on-site office. As a result of this feedback, Dev Northwest explored the available multifamily zoning options that would allow the organization to develop the most multifamily units that the building could easily accommodate while limiting other uses. The applications before you with a zone change conditioned on exactly the design set forth in the design review application, 19 units across the two buildings, are intended to meet the immediate needs of Salem's low-income residents. What becomes clear from all of the information in the record is that the city can and should make special considerations for government-funded housing in a close-in neighborhood because the need is great. As identified throughout the record, Salem has a shortfall of 207 acres of multifamily zone property. With the site measuring 0.3 acres, this zone change represents 0.14% of this need. The neighborhood has no government subsidized housing in its borders, and this location provides an opportunity for adaptive reuse of existing buildings. The present appeal does not appear to add any new arguments or information into the record since the Planning Commission meeting. However, for fullness of response, the applicant offers the following additional information and analysis addressing each point in the Grant Neighborhood Association appeal, beginning with the first 2 points. The applicant has raised its objections throughout the proceedings about the standards and plan policies that are not clear and objective as applied to needed housing. As such, such as the government-supported housing proposed here. I will not belabor the point here unless the council has additional questions, but do continue to reserve those objections. Notwithstanding these objections, the application, staff report, and additional information included in the record show that all standards are met, even subjective standards and policies. The equally or better suited provision under SRC 64025 is met based on the Planning Commission decision and additional staff report to the council. To add a finer point, the Grant Neighborhood Association merely disagrees with the result. The materials in the record and the zoning map show that multifamily development is the predominant use south of the subject property, and that a collector, D Street, borders the subject property to the south. While the Grant Neighborhood Association may not agree that preserving the existing buildings on the site acts as a buffer to single-family uses, the fact of the matter is that a buffer is established by the existing church building to help block neighboring single-family uses from the noise along D Street and multifamily uses to the south. The other points that Grant Neighborhood Association raises about the proximity to public transit and to the employment core of the city are in fact important characteristics of the site that further establish that this site is equally or better suited to the RH zoning as conditioned in this application in comparison to the existing single-family zoning. As to the open house requirement, the applicant provided ample explanation in its October 6, 2020 letter at pages 2 through 4 of all the steps it has taken to meet and exceed the requirements under SRC 300.320 to host an open house, respond to neighborhood comments, and to continue to meet with Grant Neighborhood Association's Land Use Committee about the proposal. The outcome is that Dev Northwest adjusted its applications to meet the criticisms of neighbors and other stakeholders. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Emily Ryman to provide additional information responsive to this appeal and describe the overall goals for this housing development. I will close the presentation addressing the remaining appeal items.
Go ahead, Emily. You're on, there you go.
My name is Emily Ryman. I'm the CEO of Dev Northwest, and our Salem address is at 528 Cottage Street Northeast. Dev Northwest mission is to create financial stability and opportunity for low-income individuals, families, and communities. And we believe that our communities are made stronger when everyone has a chance to thrive, including the most vulnerable among us. When you first heard about this project in June of 2020, you'll remember that we were planning to request a commercial mixed-use zone with 14 units of housing in the church and our office in the parsonage. As Jennifer mentioned, the changes you see today are in direct response to the opposition expressed by the Grant Neighborhood Association and some members of council to that commercial zone and the use of the parsonage for an office. Most importantly, we've switched entirely to housing, converting the parsonage into studio units. We've also changed our rezoning request to a residential zone. You'll notice that we're asking for residential high-rise, which is the only residential zone that would allow for more than 9 units between the two buildings. I would also note that anticipating neighborhood concern over this zone compared to the less dense R2, we've voluntarily offered conditions that will ensure this property acts as though it were R2 in all key design respects except for the number of units and the specific modifications we've requested tonight. We've also combined our site design application with the zone change to offer full transparency of the project design and our commitment to preserving the existing buildings. The project will add 19 units of affordable housing at a time when Salem is in the midst of a historic housing crisis, and the city has repeatedly reinforced its commitment to supporting affordable housing. This project will be a strong step toward reaching the city's affordable housing goals in a way that is right-sized for the neighborhood and location and offers great accessibility to transportation and downtown services for the future residents. Notwithstanding the support we've received for the proposal, I do want to acknowledge the continued opposition from the Grant Neighborhood Association. I think we have a fundamental disagreement between what we think, how we think this project will value the neighborhood and the city of Salem versus the Grant Neighborhood Association. But at the end of the day, even if we can't agree, the land use process is serving its purpose to inform both the community and the applicant, with the result that the changes to the application take into account the concerns that were raised along the way. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Jennifer to wrap up.
And I want to continue to address the specific points in the Grant Neighborhood Association appeal. The applicant accepts condition of approval 5 of the Planning Commission decision that discusses the mitigation for adverse effects related to the memorandum of agreement that was signed by the State Historic Preservation Office, or SHPO, prior to building permit issuance. This condition applies no matter whether the city imposes it in this decision, because Dev Northwest will only build housing that is federally funded on this site. The mitigation requirement is sourced in that federal funding, but not as the Planning Commission found, because the subject property is a Goal 5 resource. The property is not a Goal 5 resource because nothing under the Salem Revised Code or state law requires the site to be automatically protected under Goal 5 in this instance. Instead, only inventoried historic resources are included in the definition of Goal 5 resources. The SHPO letter in the record attached to the September 10th, 2020 supplemental staff report to the Planning Commission only describes that the property is eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. While SHPO's identification of this quality may inform a local government's designation of historic sites, the subject property is not included on the city's Goal 5 inventory. Therefore, no additional Goal 5 findings or conditions are required. In any event, this condition of approval 5 ensures that mitigation for adverse effects of upgrading windows to meet current safety standards and improving ADA accessibility will be addressed. Moreover, it is feasible for the applicant to meet the city's options for mitigation that could include such things as photographic documentation of the original feature and development of on-site and standalone educational materials under SRC 230.082, subject to public participation. Moving on to Grant Neighborhood Association's 4th point of appeal, like the appellant's challenge to the equally or better suited criteria, the appellants merely disagree with the Planning Commission and staff's determination that the proposed amendment is in the public interest and would be a general benefit. As I described in my opening about the unmet housing need and Emily's further explanation of the housing challenges for Salem's lowest income residents, not to mention all of the preceding information that Council has heard this evening, this Council's decision to make affordable housing a top policy priority, there is absolutely no question that the reuse of the existing building on this site for affordable infill development will support the public interest and be a general benefit to the city as a whole. Grant Neighborhood Association's last point about the neighborhood plan is really a non-starter. The application narrative for the zone change provides extensive response to the Grant Neighborhood Plan that it must yield to the Salem Comprehensive Plan and statewide planning goals under SRC 64310. I would like to thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, Dan Atchison.
Yes, sir.
Do we have an opportunity then to ask questions of Jennifer at this point, or how do we want to?
What? You can ask now, and you can ask during rebuttal.
Okay, we can or can't, did you say?
You can, yes, you can.
Okay. Anyone want to ask Jennifer any questions? Councilor Hoy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Ms. Breger, for coming down and testifying. I had a question about the client, or maybe this might be better for Ms. Ryman, but I'm wondering about the clients who will be served here. I think I've heard maybe a couple of different groups who might be the intended occupants of this. And I'm just curious, who are you going to be serving should this project go through?
No final determination has been made, but I'll let Emily talk to the substance of your question.
Thank you.
Sure. I think we know a few things. So because the design is studios and 1-bedrooms, it will most likely be single occupants. But we don't know much more than that because we'll have to align with affordable housing funding applications that open to us. So I could envision it being seniors. I could envision it being veterans. I could envision it being potentially young adults aging out of foster care. But to a certain extent, we have to make sure the project is approved, and then we'll have to go out and apply to the state for funding. And so we'll have to be a little bit responsive to those funding, the funding that's available. We're also in conversations with potential partners around Salem for partnership service provision. Where's the greatest need in the city right now that's currently unmet? And so that will remain a variable conversation as we move forward.
Thank you.
Councilor Anderson?
Thank you. This is a question for Ms. Ryman. I see through all the application here, and it's about 3/4 of an inch to an inch. There's some concern about the commitment to retaining and reusing the buildings. And I look at the conditions, and there's nothing in there specifically about that, with the exception of maybe condition 5, which could be read to mean that. So I would just like you to comment again upon your organization's commitment to retaining these buildings.
Absolutely, happy to. Our intention is 100% to retain the buildings. It's why we consolidated our site design applications with the zoning application. So what would be approved tonight is simply the conversion of that church into the 19 units that we've proposed. It's why we were attracted to the property. We think they're wonderful buildings. We want to repurpose them. We have zero interest in tearing down those buildings and building a high rise, nor could we with the conditions that we've put on the zoning change.
That's what I really am interested, that you can't do that. You've got a commitment, but you're also saying you do not believe under the conditions that are there, you could do that if you wanted to.
That is my understanding.
And then I think this was just a little bit of a mistake. You said the church in the 19 units. The church is 14 units, and the manse is the 5 units.
Correct. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah. Well, listen, I grew up in a manse, so I know what a manse is and what a church is. So, thanks.
Yeah.
Will you be doing, and I'm not sure which of you to ask, but will you be doing a full seismic upgrade then of the church and the house that'll meet housing safety standards?
Mayor, thank you for that question. We've seen the public comments related to the seismic upgrades that are required. If you look at the October 6th letter that was submitted, the applicant's architect and structural engineer have been working with the City of Salem's building department, and a full seismic upgrade is not required, but the requirements of the Oregon Structural Specialty Code that do apply to this specific occupancy standard will be met to design safe and habitable residences. For the architects and structural engineers submitted additional testimony in attachments 6 and 7 of that letter. I can read you more specifics.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to understand whether you had to or not had to, and quickly reading through testimony
right.
Before we got going, the issue had come up, and I really didn't understand how. I think you hit on it exactly, which is you want an occupancy permit, and you're going to have to do something to make that building safe for occupancy in this kind of. What's going on?
Can you repeat what you just said? You cut out there.
Your volume keeps going in and out, Mr. Mayor. As you're talking, it's kind of wobbling.
I just wanted to make sure I understood that your target is an occupancy permit, and that you're on the right track toward that.
Yeah. The building official has been consulted, and
you won't be adding any height to this building.
No.
Correct? Can you add height to this building?
The maximum height allowed is 50 feet under the proposed conditions of approval, but this building is not 50 feet.
Can you tear down the building and put up a 50-foot building in 10 years?
Well, as you just heard from Emily, the consolidated applications before you are for this specific reuse of the facility. Any other use of the building would have to go through a public review process. It would be subject to the conditions of approval you impose on the zone change tonight, which would include the height and building lot coverage limitations that match the RM2 zone. And there's no guarantee that that would be allowed. So should, God forbid, something happen to the church and the church came down in a catastrophe, then yeah, there could be a replacement building. But otherwise, the Dev Northwest is positioned as a mission-based organization. They've consolidated these applications, presented them together because this is the project they want. They're not speculating on the land or planning to sell it to someone else to allow them to tear it down.
Can they sell it to someone else? I was curious.
Well, they're a private property owner like anyone else, so.
They'd have an RH zone that they can sell to someone else. Okay.
But they'd have an RH zone subject to a 50-foot limitation on anything that could happen.
Councilor Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This isn't a question so much as a comment. I just wanted to thank you, Ms. Ryman, for hearing our concerns earlier in the year about the commercial zoning and bringing an office into the neighborhood. And I feel like this proposal is responsive to our concerns. And I just really appreciate you sticking with it and coming back with something that at least assuaged my concerns. So I appreciate that.
That's great. Thank you, Councilor.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Hey, we'll go to Mr. Tigan then. Mr. Atchison. You see appellant?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Paul, you're up.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Councilors. Paul Tigan, 836 Church Street Northeast, appearing tonight as the Land Use Chair for the Grant Neighborhood Association. Thank you for taking the time to hear our appeal of the Planning Commission's decision regarding these two historic properties within the Grant neighborhood. It is the position of the Grant Neighborhood Association that this consolidated application should be denied for 3 reasons. First, the application does not meet the basic objective standards for a comp plan amendment and zone change. It is your determination and decision to decide whether it does. Second, such a change, were to be approved under the justification offered in the application, would have profound impacts on the Grant neighborhood in particular, but also radiate out to other fully functional single-family properties in the city. And finally, and rather sadly, the applicant for this project has failed to engage in productive dialogue with the neighborhood association on how best to move forward with this project. Before you tonight is a proposal to amend every single level of the planning hierarchy in the city: the comprehensive plan, our neighborhood plan, and the property zone. City code places a very high burden on the applicant when requesting such a remarkable change. The code states, the more impactful the change, the higher the burden. And let's be clear about what's being proposed. There is no more substantial change that can take place under city code for residences than rezoning a fully built out single family property to residential high rise. The justification for this scale of one-off zone change has to be practically unassailable. This is one of the oldest neighborhoods in the city. It's not derelict, it's not underutilized, it's not undergoing an economic change. It's functioning exactly as intended under the current comp plan, the next comp plan, what we know of it, and the code. The current success of the neighborhood makes it even harder to meet the standard for a change, that the new zone is somehow equally or better suited to this location than the current zone. The record, the voluminous record, provides many arguments for how the proposed change does not meet this standard, but I'll focus on just one for time's sake: parking. With 19 units, it's not inconceivable that this project would introduce 30 additional cars to the on-street parking adjacent to the properties. A year ago, this project would have been required to provide 27 off-street parking units for off-street parking spots for 19 units. Today, there's no obligation to provide off-street parking, and it's not even clear that the 7 spots on site would be reserved for the residents. The current parking situation for residents in the immediate vicinity of this property is not great. Adding this many units and the cars they bring with them will not result in a zone or use that is equal or better than the current situation. The opposite is true. The zone change will make it worse. The incentive to develop multifamily by decreasing parking requirements in the city has revealed an unwieldy consequence. This project shows that even single-family properties are being incentivized to be rezoned and benefit from this policy change. This impact on nearby parking is absolutely material to the decision of whether rezoning is justified because the impact is so closely tied to the zone. Last year, they might have argued there was no impact to parking from a zone change. This year, no way around it. The situation will be much worse because of the zone change. So much worse that it's ground to deny the zone change entirely. Now, I've talked to dozens of neighbors about this project, and inevitably, almost every conversation gets to the same point. Can I rezone my house too? Or more, perhaps more to the point, can some developer? Honestly, when we look at the justification offered for this project, the answer has to be a shrug. Maybe. We've entered into the record a map that shows almost every property in Grant being eligible for the waiver of off-street parking because of proximity to the Chariots network. This seems to be the most compelling reason offered why this proposed zone is equal or better than single-family housing. What if developers start buying up other land in our neighborhood and propose similar changes? Two or three properties at Winter and Belmont wouldn't take much to get to half an acre. Would a proposal to replace those houses with a 30-unit apartment building receive the same treatment under a precedent established here tonight? Is 60 units per acre the future of Grant neighborhood? This isn't fear-mongering. It's hardwired right into the city code. The next applicant only has to show that there's been a change in the immediate vicinity to justify their rezoning application. When it comes to rezone the triplex at the corner of Cottage and E Street as high-rise, or the RM2 across the street as high-rise, this project is justification number one. The effect is a snowball. Even away from this project, this low bar for rezoning could easily seep into other neighborhoods. What about High and Howard Streets, Fur and Washington, Windsor and Evergreen? Based on the justifications in this application, proximity to a bus line, a collector street, each of these corners is a mere willing seller and willing buyer away from a similar project. Now, the Grant neighborhood, as the council knows, is not a collection of monkey renters or NIMBYists. And in this, the Grant Neighborhood Association tried. We did. We attended the applicant's online open house in May. It was a one-way affair in which members of the community had to submit their comments and questions for approval by the applicant, though they chose to ignore some of our pressing concerns. So we formed a small group to further describe our concerns, and we had one meeting with the applicant. They came to our June association meeting to present the commercial office rezoning concept. Now, it's known that the city council politely declined to invest in that effort and encouraged the applicant to work with the neighborhood association on a mutually agreeable solution. But here's what the record shows. Our subcommittee met with the applicant once more in mid-July. Prior to that meeting, Grant heard the city council, and we took a close 5-4 vote, agreeing to compromise and accept a less dense RM2 rezone. We told the applicant this, asked to participate in a revisioning of the project, and asked them to update us regularly on this project and future projects. We never heard from the applicant again. They drafted a new consolidated application without ever coming back to the association. We invited them in August, they didn't come, and they finalized their application with the city 2 days later. We invited them in September, they couldn't make it. They never held an open house as required under the city's code for consolidated applications, and never used our association meetings to fulfill the requirement, despite our invitation for them to do so. Instead of talking to us, they depend on a panel of experts to write off our concerns. A traffic engineer to tell us that D Street is perfectly safe, despite our daily experiences. And actually, because of D Street's imperfections, it has a calming effect on the traffic. They hired a structural engineer to tell us they actually don't have to, and as you heard tonight, won't make the building seismically safe. And certainly, legal counsel to help guide their application through this process and respond to our concerns. They never proactively reached out to the association. They're the applicant of the project. The burden of justifying this significant change is wholly on them. And what's more, they expect you, the council, not just to approve, but invest in their project, while simultaneously demonstrating the belief that the best way to operate in the city of Salem is to railroad the neighborhoods. Internally, in July, the association felt like we were a handful of meetings away from turning the boat on this project. Grant Neighborhood Association took that hard 5-4 vote, very uncharacteristic for us, and agreed to support the RM2 as a compromise position. The response, never gonna pencil. They never detailed why, and they never talked to us again. What would have happened if they'd heeded the council's advice and continued to work with us? Could they sell the parsonage and redevelop the church at their suggested density? We never discussed it. Would they agree to improve crosswalks near the property in order to actually calm traffic and alleviate concerns? What about working with the city to issue parking permits in the R1 zone instead of the R2 zone? We were ignored by both the applicant and the city on these points. In closing, I hope I'm delivering in this testimony in a way that conveys something like regret. We're determined to get to yes, and we've been shut out. As it sits tonight, this proposal fails to meet the high bar set by the code for a zone change. Awarding this rezone in a case would have an outsized impact beyond these two properties, and certainly massive changes like this should be done in the spirit of cooperation with our neighborhoods and not by shutting them out. Thanks for your time. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Councilor Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Taggin, for your testimony. I have to say, and I don't enjoy the position that I'm in, but I'm a little bit confused and concerned by the neighborhood's position here. Because I thought I heard pretty clearly that Grant Neighborhood supported a project of this nature. I understand maybe there's some differences in the detail, and I understand that maybe the applicant wasn't as collaborative as we would like them to be with our neighborhood associations, because I know Grant Neighborhood has a strong history of collaboration. And I get that this feels like that didn't happen. But it seems like, as I read this application, we got to a place that's actually what you were talking about supporting before. I mean, I think one thing that I've observed in this is that our zone, the name of our zone is horrible. That high rise, I think, just raises everybody's hackles and concerns. And you picture a high rise, which is like Portland or New York City or something, which is not at all what we're contemplating, obviously. And I've actually asked staff to consider changing the name of that, just for the very reason I think it causes unnecessary concern. It certainly caused it for me initially. I'm like, high rise, what are you talking about here? But what they've come down to with the conditions, we have 19 units that are 1 bedroom or studio, a combination, as opposed to 9 units that could have been 3 or 4 bedrooms, which I think could have ended up with a lot more people in it. So to me, this is a lot more prescriptive in terms of how many people are actually going to occupy this place. And it gets to a place that I thought that your association said you could support. And I have one more question after that, but I just hope you can respond to what I've said so far.
Yeah, I think that the operative difference from the neighborhood association's position, the operative difference between RM2 and residential high rise, agreed, the names maybe, is density. That's it. The goal of the housing analysis for density across the city is 6.5 units per acre. 19 units on 0.3 acres like they propose here is 60 units per acre. So I think you have to understand the other part of the longer term concern of the neighborhood association is that some of these maybe unintended results of approval like this. What if there's something structurally unfeasible about the church itself? If they or the next owner was in a position to tear it down, that church is 30 feet tall. The next building could be 50 feet tall. And even if it was only 19 units, it could be 19 3-bedroom units, just as they suggested. We like multifamily units with 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms. So I think I don't think it's hyperbole for the neighborhood association to wonder and discuss, and for you to consider what is the maximum thing that could happen under this decision tonight. You know, and I hesitate to say this, but sometimes you think you're approving one thing and you're actually approving a Costco, and it takes 10 years for that decision to lay out. I see a tilted head, I'm sorry. But I really think that, you know, it's part of our concern as a neighborhood that this is the top of a slippery slope. And that is part of the argument. Now, I think that there's still the RM2 zone itself, the limitation of density is the operative limitation. And when we say RM2 for density, that's what we're talking about.
I appreciate what you had to say, Mr. Tigan, and I appreciate your sentiment. I think I disagree that this is, I don't know what the right word would be. I disagree that this is a harbinger of horrible things to come. I think it's actually going to be a good project, and I don't think it'll have a negative impact. Now, I get the parking concern, and this project gets the illustrious honor of being the first one to illustrate our decision to not require parking. And it's probably the worst case that we could have come up with to be our flagship for not requiring parking. But I understand the concern there. But if we are committed to enhancing and supporting transit, you know, we've got to be willing to make the tough calls. And this is a tough call with 7 spaces for 19 units. It is. I get it. I know parking over there is a challenge. I get it. I do business in some of those state offices nearby, so I understand parking. I do. But I think if we're truly committed to enhancing transit and the use of transit, that we have to do so even when it's a hard decision. So I hear you on the parking, but I think it gets us to a better place ultimately.
Thank you, Councilor.
Well, let's just hope this isn't the beginning of a new Costco in 20 years. I've sat through one of those. It's you don't want to be on the council, I assume, Councilor Hoy, that people in 15 years look back and say, what were those people thinking of, and why'd they toss this one into our laps?
Well, I was thinking of that very thing as I was choosing my word.
I know. I could tell Councilor Henderson.
Thank you. I might add that it doesn't take 15 years. It takes more like 15 minutes before sometimes people start thinking. Mr. Tigan, I first want to commend you and the Grant neighborhood for your excellent, thorough presentation that you gave us, outline that was in the minutes. This is, you know, I'm a lawyer and I read stuff like this all the time, and this is one of the best presentations I have seen from a neighborhood group. So I want to commend you not only for this, but for you and Grant Neighborhood's dedication to a near downtown neighborhood. And I'm speaking of someone who lives on the south side of the city and also a near downtown neighborhood. Here's my question, Paul. Set aside the parade of horribles that could come with this as we fall down the slippery slope. Let's assume that, in fact, the building stays there all the time. So the church is there, the manse is there. Would you have an objection at that point to the 19 units being there when they're still in the same buildings that were already on site and sitting there, as opposed to, you know, the law of unintended consequences of a 50-foot high rise across the street?
Yeah, sure. The position of the neighborhood association is that we would have an issue with that. You know, I have to tell you from personally that I walk by the location of this project every single day. You know, it's between my home and the Grant Neighborhood School, and it's between my home and the community that we, you know, consider ourselves most closely part of. D Street is not an amazing collector route. The issues that we bring up in terms of the actual ability of the infrastructure near the site to handle additional density they're not light concerns. And so I think that when you add more cars, and I know that we want to use these projects as a way to incentivize for people to ride the bus, but time is only going to tell whether that bargain shakes itself out. So as you add more cars, it decreases visibility right there. There are no marked crosswalks there. There's not even a good place to put a crosswalk. There's no stop signs. The visibility to cross from the residences south of D Street to Grant Community School, to the Grant Community Park, it's not there. And if you've ever stood on the corner of Cottage and D Street it doesn't take 10 minutes to watch someone zip around from Church and D, head about 30 miles an hour, much too fast, not see that there's, could be 6 or 7 places people could cross, and then they zip over onto Cottage or whatever the case may be. I mean, some of the testimony provided by the applicant that D Street itself is somehow a calming environment. I'm sorry, it's like beyond incredulous. And so I would communicate on behalf of the neighborhood association that density has impacts. It's not costless. It does impact direct properties. It impacts the properties across the street. It impacts people who purchased a house thinking they were living in a single family residential neighborhood, and then they're not anymore. And you're going to hear from those people tonight in this testimony. It changes the character of the neighborhood. And so it's not just doom and gloom for the neighborhoods that you all capably serve as counselors, but it will have a very direct impact. And your question tonight is whether the change itself, the justification is it equal or better? And if the change itself is worse, it doesn't meet the criteria and it should not be approved.
What's the density of the Grant neighborhood right now? You have a fix on that?
I don't, though I believe one piece of our testimony this evening will speak to that I believe it to be double of the average in the city, but I don't know if one of the city staff could answer that.
Okay, and as you describe that neighborhood, I'm very familiar with the neighborhood. I represented the area for 9 years, but is this one of the, I tend to think of this area as one of the affordable neighborhoods in town, where it's really workforce housing because you can come in and buy it at some sort of believable price tag. Is that what your experience is, or am I just remembering it the way it was years ago?
I wouldn't admit to my neighbors that I sometimes look at housing prices on Zillow across the city of Salem, but sometimes I do. Yeah. And certainly, though housing continues to be increase in cost and be less and less affordable, I think we can all acknowledge that. This still remains a more affordable location within the city than others.
Do you have a high rise in the Grant neighborhood, high rise housing in the Grant neighborhood?
We have, I believe there's 3 or 4 parcels on 4th Street that are zoned as high rise, but they're not developed as high rise. The nearest high rise properties are in the Can-Do neighborhood, and they run on Winter Street, essentially adjacent or next to the like the parking lots and other state buildings. So the building next to the Lee, actually almost even those churches themselves are identified as high-rise residential within the zone. There's very few high-rise, essentially density limitless properties within the city.
Yeah. Well, I will admit I'm old enough to have a memory of those streets with lots of single-family homes on them until the state expanded and the density of housing increased out there. That changed that neighborhood dramatically.
I think many people know that D Street represents a dividing line between our neighborhood and the central core of the city. And this is one of the things that we wanted to talk about and did talk about with the applicant from the very outset, is that when you start introducing further northward march of the density and high intense uses into that, it's just like an 11 block single family. I mean, it's not like the neighborhood I grew up in, St. Paul, that had hundreds of acres of single family homes. We're talking about 11 blocks.
Yeah.
And so we see that as an erosion of that character.
Any other questions for Paul? Okay. Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, we'll go to the list then. Mary Ann Spradlin.
Okay, here I am.
Sorry about the false start, Mary Ann.
It's okay, thank you. My name is Mary Ann Spradlin. I own property at 850 Church Street Northeast, which is about 1 block southwest of the subject property. I also own property in Scan, in case you're wondering. I am opposed to the zone change, and for several reasons. The Grant neighborhood plan for this area is to conserve, I'm quoting, to conserve this close-in location for single-family living and to prevent encroachment on the single-family core area from more intensive uses. And if this zone is changed, there's no going back. It'll never go back to single-family again. And it isn't just a zone change request, it's a quality of life for the neighborhood request. I'm concerned that if the zone change is approved, it opens the door for nibbling away at single-family property all around the edge of the neighborhood. There's a precedent, which would be, in my opinion, not good. And like Paul said, it is a relatively small enclave of single-family homes. And it's also north of D, which has traditionally been a protected area. So that's another reason. It is obvious that this zone change benefits only Dev Northwest and whoever they might sell the property to in the future. It doesn't really benefit the neighborhood. And there's also a real concern, I think, that the brick church building will not be able to withstand the extensive remodel process, and it will just fall down. And even though Dev Northwest says they're acting in good faith and they have no intention of building a 50-foot high-rise, really nothing to stop them if the zone change is approved. I respectfully request that you reverse the decision and not allow the zone change to move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions? Jerry Ambrose.
Hi, Jerry Ambrose, Ward 6. Hello, City Council members and Mayor Bennett. As previously mentioned, my name is Jerry Ambrose. I am the Executive Director with Habitat for Humanity, to our local affiliate here in Salem. For the last 15 years, my career has focused on developing affordable housing, including multifamily units, when I previously worked for the Farm Worker Housing Development Corporation, and I was a part of a development here on South Lancaster on Saddle Club. Because of that background, and also being an Executive Director with Habitat for Humanity for the last 11 years, I have seen firsthand the tremendous need for affordable housing. All of us know of someone who is or has been affected by not having sustainable and affordable housing. We know that people who rely on affordable housing are our relatives, our neighbors, grocery clerks, care providers, and other hardworking people. We are committed to supporting housing for them and rising above the not in my backyard sentiment. It's easy for us who have stable housing to say, don't build those apartments in my neighborhood, but put yourself in the shoes of more than 4,000 households who are on the Salem Housing Authority's waiting list for affordable housing units, and the many other families who didn't make it onto that list. The City of Salem's consolidated plan includes a goal of expanding affordable housing. The plan states, housing units needed to address the crisis is calculated at over 20,000. Our community needs to say yes to every affordable housing opportunity to meet this immense need. Habitat for Humanity of the Mid-Willamette Valley is in support of the Evergreen Church affordable housing renovation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, Nicole Olivas-Leyva.
Hello, thank you, Mayor Bennett. Good evening, Salem City Council. My name is Nicole Olivas-Leyva, and I work downtown in Salem at 528 Cottage Street, Salem, Oregon 97301. I was born and raised in the Willamette Valley. I'm a resident of Marion County. I also serve on the board of directors for a local homeless shelter. I speak to you this evening in support of the affordable housing project presented by Dev Northwest. I want to begin by acknowledging the work that you all do as the City Council. Your service to the City of Salem is important and sincerely appreciated. I have nothing but gratitude to you for the sacrifices you make to serve this community and the tough decisions you make in consideration of its residents. Working in downtown Salem, I'm confronted with the gravity of our housing crisis daily. I see our neighbors sleeping on sidewalks, in doorways, and in tents in the downtown corridor. Many of us know someone who has been affected by the current housing crisis. It could be a loved one that is now living with relatives due to the rental market instability, a friend who struggled for many months to find a safe rental, or a coworker who may be sleeping in their car despite working full-time. We know that a community is stronger when its residents have access to safe, stable, and affordable housing. Neighbors can contribute more when they spend less time worrying about their housing situation and can focus more on their families and contributions to their community. It is said that Salem needs hundreds more housing units to adequately serve our citizens, and particularly more safe and affordable units. The project presented to the City Council will provide 19 units in downtown Salem. Residents who struggle the most to find rentals will be served by this affordable housing project. Being close to public transportation, jobs, and services is important to our neighbors, and this location is perfect in that regard. Studio and one-bedroom units serve a uniquely important population like our seniors, veterans, and young adults just starting out. This project is a step in a much-needed direction. By affirming approval for this project, Salem City Council will be playing a vital role in getting much-needed affordable housing units into the community. By working in cooperation with affordable housing developers like Dev Northwest, you can make a difference for the residents of Salem. Supporting this project means that 19 individuals will be able to find safe, stable, and affordable housing. Please consider approving this project this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Howard Collins. Howard Collins.
I'm here, listed under Dana Collins.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. She's a lot prettier than I am.
Oh, okay. So we don't call you Dana. We'll call you Howard.
You can call me Howard. That's okay. Let's see. There we go. So the host has asked me to start your video. Okay, I'll start my video. There we go.
There you are.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Council and the mayor. Hello to everybody. I want to thank you for your time. I'm a resident of Grant Neighborhood, and I've been here for several years and worked with the Grant Neighborhood Association. I found them to be very, very cooperative and helpful and collaborative in endorsing various projects over the years. We are not an association that endorses not in my backyard. We see a need for affordable housing. That's very true. You can't deny that we have houseless and people who are in desperate need of housing. So I want you to seriously consider the objections, though, however, of the Grant Neighborhood Association in opposing this. They don't oppose not having affordable housing. They want affordable housing. Let's keep it to the RM2 limit, 9 units. And if those are 2 or 3 bedroom units, so be it. Then we'll have families, we'll have children. We will create an environment with 9 units between these 2 buildings. Nothing has been illustrated that would justify by the applicants of violating that standard of density that Paul so very clearly pointed out. But we're not saying no to development. We're saying yes to development. It just might not be exactly what Dev Northwest wants or feels they have to have. If they have to have 19 units, then they'll need to find a piece of property in an area that's already zoned for that use. And then they can use public funds to develop that property in a zone that's already ready for it. We are willing as an association to compromise to RM2 and think that does help and create some affordable housing. We can't create and solve it all. One project here may help. Last thing, I've got 1 minute left. I want to say this very clearly. And Paul said it very well. You go down this path and you're going to have many developers, many contractors, many people looking at pieces of property and coming to you with this same request time and time again. I could walk through Grant neighborhood, the small area it is, and probably find 7 or 8 that would fit this criteria. And they are in South Salem, they're in East Salem, they are in West Salem, they are a multitude. And if you approve this, I can't help but tell you that is a slippery slope you're going down. And I don't want you to do that because you will find it virtually impossible to say no. And you'll be subjected to all kinds of approaches by people like myself who might be advocating and say, hey, you're being discriminatory. That is not a good position for the council to be in. And you can head that off by simply telling Dev Northwest, you go ahead with the project, keep it to RM2. Thank you.
Thank you, Howard. So Howard, what you're telling us is that Paul talked about a 5-4 vote. The 5-4 vote was to go to 9 units as opposed to 19. That's what that vote was about.
That was my understanding. I was not.
I mean, at the essence of it, I guess is.
Yeah, I believe so. I was not present, so I just have to take it from what I've heard.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
TJ Putman.
Hi, I'm TJ Putman. I live at 4070 Hennessy Lane in Kaiser, Oregon. I wish you could hear the internal cringe when I say that I live in Kaiser. Because I really, really, really wanted a house actually in the Grant neighborhood. I work in Ward 1 on Edgewater Street for Family Promise. We do shelter and housing for families with children. I mentioned my affinity to the Grant neighborhood. I actually grew up on the corner of Shipping and Winter. Every day I'd walk that block and a half or so to Grant Elementary School. I am still friends with neighbors that I grew up with in that community. We would walk about a half mile or so down to Parish Middle School every day. Like the Grant community or the Grant neighborhood is something that defines like who I am today and how I get to help people in my community. So I absolutely love that I get to be in a position to where I get to give back and care about one another. I love the Grant neighborhood and I want what's best for it. When I moved back to Salem in 2011, I didn't expect to stay here. I initially kind of got a temporary job with Nedco, which is now Dev Northwest. And one was impressed with everybody who worked there. And I also saw the way that they invested in the residents through whether it be the IDA or other housing stability programs that they had, but also the community partner that they were towards like where their headquarters are in Eugene, but also the work that they did here in Salem. Communities are better when Dev Northwest is a part of it. In my job at Family Promise, since October 1st, we've had to turn away 66 families representing 216 people that are unduplicated that needed that emergency shelter or housing assistance. We have an inventory issue right now with housing, that the affordability of housing in our inventory are not in a place where low-income folks can access it. I think Dev Northwest would be a great steward of this property, which is formerly Evergreen Presbyterian Church, but also we need it in our community. We need more housing in our community, and Dev Northwest is willing to help with that. If you approve this project, great. If you don't approve this project, great. I think there's ways to make it come through, but we need more housing in Salem.
TJ, thank you very much. TJ, on the need for housing, you described a certain unit that'd be looking for housing. What do you need? Most commonly, what do you need? Do you need one bedroom? Do you need 2, 3, 4? What do you need for if you were going to hit the need of your client base as you described it?
It's really hard to find adequate 4+ bedroom, anything over 3 bedrooms. If we had more 2 and 3 bedrooms, that's going to take care of 80 to 90% of the need. We work with families with kids. Their 1-bedroom units just aren't going to work for them.
So this isn't for your clients. This isn't going to serve your clients as a it sounds almost like a studio, but at least a 1-bedroom.
The studios and 1-bedrooms aren't going to help families with children. I mean, there you might be able to squeeze one in, but somebody that just has a minor child with them. But in reality, that's not the best situation for them.
So the proposal from Grant, which is 9 units, multi-bedroom, is more aimed at families, whereas the Dev Northwest is more aimed at seniors or others who are single veterans or others maybe who are single. Is that I mean, it's really I'm trying to understand, is there a better configuration than what's being proposed by the applicant? And did the appellant hit actually the right configuration for the needs in the community?
If you look at the homeless population that you see downtown and that community partners are working with are those single individuals for the most part. Like, you don't see families as much, but we see it in our data that there's 66 families that need that emergency assistance. So I don't think this one unit's going to solve the problem, but we have a significant inventory issue that we need to start building up.
How about those with kids in school that are homeless? Are they going to be served by that 1-bedroom unit? I mean, I agree with you about walking to Grant and all that, going to the great Grant School and Parish. Is this being built for them, or is this being built for somebody else?
I couldn't speak to that, but like I said, I think we need more inventory. So families or individuals. Yeah.
Or even affordable housing. Single family homes might be nice to have in town as well. Okay. Thank you. Dustin Purnell.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Dustin Purnell, and I live at 941 Cottage Street Northeast, the closest neighbor to the north of the church and the parsonage. I've had the opportunity to serve in our neighborhood as the principal at Parish Middle School for 6 years. This community has had a tremendous impact on our family, so much so that we moved into the neighborhood a 1.5 years ago. Before moving, we were aware of the zoning in the neighborhood and the surrounding neighborhoods. I've also been following the development of our Salem plan for the city. The pending sale and rezoning application of Dev Northwest has raised several concerns that I'd like to share. First, our concern has nothing to do with the proposed use of the building and everything to do with the zone change to residential high-rise. We are advocates of affordable housing. We are not advocates for residential high-rise zoning that contradicts the city's comprehensive plan and the Grant Neighborhood Association's comprehensive plan. I appreciated the City Council's decision not to provide grant funding to this project at the June 22nd meeting. Mayor Bennett, at that meeting, you asked the developer to go back and work with the neighborhood. Instead of complying with your request, the developers quickly changed their request to residential high-rise and did not engage with the neighborhood. I served on grant subcommittee for this project, and even after the developer declined to attend Grant's Neighborhood Association meeting, the association and myself approved the support of a zone change to RM2. Second, approving a residential high-rise zone in the middle of a neighborhood that does not comply with the neighborhood plan or the city's plan would be detrimental to the city. Neighborhood plans would become moot. Why invest in an Salem plan if we are going to arbitrarily decide to make exceptions? It would undoubtedly set precedents for developers and homeowners all over the city to apply for zone changes. The city has an effective plan to address the housing needs of the community, and Dev Northwest can and should work within it. Lastly, I recognize there might be pressure to not vote against this project a second time. Being a leader is difficult. As a leader of a middle school with over 700 students, there are times when I have to make difficult decisions. As a school, we collectively create comprehensive achievement plans and goals every year to dictate the direction of the school. There are so many logistical factors that are involved in this. Throughout any year, we receive proposals from stakeholders that appear to be good, but do not align with our comprehensive achievement plan. Sometimes there's political, parental, or even internal pressure to deviate. In all cases, I believe it is my responsibility and duty to align my decision with a plan that is in place for the best interest of the students. I encourage you to make this decision this evening that aligns with the plans adopted by the neighborhood and the city. I urge the council to not allow the residential high-rise zone at this property. If the city is considering a zone change, RM2 makes more sense, creates affordable housing, and does not set precedent of high-rise zoning in the middle of a neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Purnell. Any questions? Mr. Purnell, you've been looking closely at the Salem plan. I took a look at it as well, just because I was meeting with them about the plan generally. Is this an exception to that plan as we see it at this point, understanding it hasn't been adopted yet, but is this an exception to that plan for that property across D Street?
Yes, there are no proposed changes in that plan in our neighborhood right here at D Street and Cottage down to Market Street. There is proposed changes up on Broadway, I believe.
You would have firsthand knowledge too about the kind of situation that families find themselves in at Parish. I mean, I live in the neighborhood as well and am pretty familiar with it. And wouldn't that be the more appropriate need for kids, for families, would be the approach that you all are taking with RM2?
Absolutely, and that was the conversation that we as a neighborhood had, and I've had multiple conversations with. I mean, it's never been about objecting to the use. It's been about, hey, RM2 makes a lot more sense. As Paul mentioned, it has to do with the density and the parking and the safety around here. But yes, bringing more families in would be a good thing.
Do you have families in the Parish Elementary or in the Parish Middle School, district or catchment area that need this kind of housing?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Aaron Day.
There you go. Good evening, everybody. My name is Aaron Day, 528 Cottage Street. I am the Director of Real Estate Development for Dev Northwest. First of all, I just want to thank all the council members for taking the time to review the copious amounts of comments that we received and the applications. I realize that you all are volunteering your time, and so I appreciate all the effort and thought that you're putting into it. We really appreciate it. I just want to comment a little bit on a few of the points that Paul raised and that have come up a bit. I also want to apologize that this is the first time that I'm facing the council. As we all know, this has been a challenging year, and unfortunately, both of my parents contracted COVID-19, and I lost my mom about 6 weeks ago. So the reason why I was not in attendance in the July meeting was because of that. That is also the reason why, thank you. That is also the reason why I was not in attendance for the August Neighborhood Association meeting. So that was my responsibility to attend that meeting for my organization, and I canceled it. I canceled my appearance at that meeting 2 hours before because both of my parents were in the intensive care unit, and I was losing one of my parents. So I'm a little bit disappointed that the Neighborhood Association has opted to exploit that particular example as us being non-cooperative, because that's absolutely not the case. Dev Northwest has been very available to the neighborhood and has reached out multiple times and has offered to meet with land use folks, both in and out of the regular meeting. So I do want to say that we have very much have tried our best to have good communications. And if this project moves forward, we hope to continue to try and work and build that relationship. I also want to point out that the issue that was brought to you in the summertime was actually for city funding to help support the acquisition of this project. And for those of you who are worried about Dev Northwest purchasing the property, getting it rezoned and selling it off, I just want to remind the council that we intend to use city funds to purchase this property, and those city funds encumber the property for a pretty lengthy affordability period, which basically requires Dev Northwest, if we were to try to bait and switch on anybody, that would come with significant financial penalty to us, as well as tarnish our relationship in the city. And again, I want to remind everybody that Dev Northwest is one of 2 CHOTA organizations for the city of Salem. We do work in this area, and we don't have a history of ever buying properties and selling them off to developers. So we have a longstanding history of responsible, affordable development that we're very proud of, and we fully intend to honor our commitment to both the city that we're making tonight, the council, but also if we end up using city funds to purchase this property as well. So I just wanted to remind city council of that. I also wanted to point,
your time's up. I'm sorry.
Realize I have 1 minute. I just have a couple minutes left.
No, your time's up. I'm sorry. Ma'am, your time's up. I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Councilor Anderson.
Thank you. Ms. Day, thanks for coming. I wonder if you could just tell the council briefly the function and purpose and mission of Dev Northwest and its predecessor organization, NEDCO. Thanks.
Absolutely. So Dev Northwest is a newly formed organization from 2 merged organizations. Willamette Neighborhood Housing Services, based out of Corvallis, which is a multifamily housing developer, as well as NEDCO, which was based out of Eugene, Springfield, with offices in Salem and Clackamas County. So we do a variety of things. We have 4 business lines. So not only do we develop affordable housing, both home ownership and rental housing, but we also have a small business lending program. We have a CDFI arm called Community Lending Works. We have a Thriving Neighborhoods program, which ensures that the residents both in our housing as well as the surrounding communities are supported. And so we invest in specific neighborhoods and try to help support those neighborhoods holistically along with the neighbors. And we also have an asset building program, which is our strongest service provider in Salem right now. And they provide financial education and counseling, as well as IDA assistance and various other programs to residents. So we believe that housing should be accessible to everybody. We believe that the folks who fall into the aging in place category or the first-time homebuyer category or single parents or folks who have experienced financial difficulty or questionable status in terms of just their citizenship, that everybody deserves a safe and healthy home. And I do want to point out that our mission is not just to serve one population. So it was raised here, and I think TJ brought up family housing, and we absolutely see the value in family housing. And in fact, Dev Northwest currently owns and operates nearly 500 units, most of which are family housing. So we absolutely see the need for family housing, but I don't think anyone on council or TJ intended to make the statement that housing for our elderly or our vets or folks who are appropriate for these 19 single bedroom units or 1 bedroom units don't deserve a safe and stable housing close to downtown. So does that answer your question in a nutshell?
Yes, it does. I'm sure that was as brief as you could get it, but thank you, and I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Ms. Day, I want to ask you a little bit about that, though. When you come into a community or are working in a community and you look at a single-family neighborhood with a thriving elementary, middle, and high school within walking distance, all of that, how do you view this then? Why 19 units rather than 9, serving a population that has beyond chariots, has really the kind of infrastructure in place that's appropriate for family housing? I want to kind of understand, is 19 units just a better business model, or what's the plan there?
I think the first approach that we take when we walk into a community is we take a look at all of the needs of the community. So is family housing in that area important? Absolutely. I think some would argue that single room occupancy in 1 bedroom units close to downtown, where there's a fairly high homeless population and a lack of affordable housing for individuals like seniors or veterans, is also an important population to meet. And so we don't walk into a community with a prescribed notion of what we're going to do in that neighborhood. We walk into a neighborhood and we look at all of the needs of everybody in that neighborhood, and then we look at the properties that are available. We look at the properties that are available, we look at the sites that are in front of us, and we also look at the funding sources that we are working with. And anybody who has been any part of an affordable housing development knows that, you know, if we could just wave a magic wand and kind of develop affordable housing exactly how we want to do it in a way that sort of appeases everybody, we would do that. But that rarely happens. And so we take all the factors into consideration. And I think anyone who knows us as an organization, anybody who's looked at our work in any of the areas that we are and our reputation, has good things to say about us. We have a well-established reputation in Western Oregon, and we're proud of that. And I think we took the work of both Willamette Neighborhood Housing Services and NEDCO and put them together, and we're stronger than we've ever been, and we believe in community. Our work is focused on communities.
Sure, but why not family housing? Why wasn't family housing considered, or was it considered?
Oh, everything was considered.
Was it? Why didn't it move forward? What was the impediment?
Well, one of the primary issues with and this is a very nuanced thing, but when you're looking at how to use a building, and you're looking at how to fund that building from an affordable housing perspective, one of the constraints is that the funding is not tied to bedroom count. It's tied to units. So that's one of the issues. And
is that a federal system, or is that a state system that
it's mostly a state system, but it can go both ways.
Does it work against families to have that kind of system in place?
Not
saying the state and feds are
not necessarily. No, and I think that.
Well, it sounds like it. I'm just trying to understand.
No, I don't think it does at all. I think that it's
okay.
Site itself, because it's not just one factor. So you can't just look at one particular structure and kind of decide. You have to factor in every piece of the equation. And so that means what funding sources are available at that time, what different needs are in the community. And I think some people would argue pretty strongly that downtown Salem needs single bedroom units and 1 bedroom units just as much as family units. We're not saying.
I'm just looking at 1,000 children are homeless in our school district, and we're in an area where we have the schools right there. I just trying to understand how you looked at this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We considered all sides of. We considered every population. We looked at every I can't emphasize enough how hard our team has worked on this project and how much we've invested in this before we even own the property, to try and see if we can make this project work. And I just, again, want to remind the council, we're working with limited resources. So we're not a developer that's coming away with a huge developer fee. So we're not going to volunteer to take on processes that are more time consuming and lengthy and hard unless we truly believe that that's the best use of the site and that we're doing the best we can to make that happen. That's just not what, that doesn't make any sense from us from a pure financial perspective and time perspective. We're taking this, we decided to modify our application in response to both the council's comments and the neighborhood's reaction. We did the best that we could to find a residential zone that met the needs of what the neighborhood was asking for to the best of our ability. And we voluntarily placed conditions on it to ensure that the zoning was as close to that as we could possibly get while still moving a feasible project forward. And so we have absolutely done our best to make sure that we have heard everybody's comments. We haven't, we're here tonight. We're back in front of you. We've persevered through that, and we've done it because we believe in this project and we believe that Salem needs this housing. And we've—
Okay, thank you. I hear what you're saying.
Thank you.
Okay, Joseph Moore.
Joseph Moore, 860 West Park Street, Eugene. I am here as an architect, as a designer of the project, and offered to, let me see if it looks like maybe video.
Joseph, you turned off your mic.
Getting muted by the host. Let me see if I can do this.
There you are. There you are. You're ready.
All right.
Okay, let's start the clock again for you.
Well, I really am here as a team member with Dev Northwest. I'm an architect from GMA and entered in to offer testimony if needed. And I don't know if you caught it, but just to start formally, Joseph Moore, 860 West Park, Eugene, Oregon. I'm happy to answer questions, but really have nothing prepared to testify.
Have any questions? Councilor Anderson.
Thank you, and thanks for being here, Mr. Moore. There's been some discussion about whether or not the church building could withstand internal changes to make it into a 14-unit apartment building. And I see some place where there's some discussion of, I think, like an internal skeleton that you would build in. So I'd just like you to address what improvements would have to be made inside the church, and is that possible? Can the church building itself actually sustain these new uses of it on the inside?
Yeah, in a nutshell, we would be building new floors and walls to entirely contain the indoor spaces that are created, leaving the exterior of the building intact. And that will essentially reinforce the building from within. Now, that system is a wood system. It's inside the building. We wouldn't need to go in and open up the masonry walls. But what we would be doing would be voluntary. The new use that's proposed does not trigger a mandatory seismic upgrade. That is a very clear threshold that's required by the structural code of the state of Oregon. And it's driven by occupant load, it's driven by the size of structure, et cetera. That nexus is not met by this project. In fact, the residential use is a much lower occupant load than the church. So I think that's important to keep in mind, that in fact, this use is a lower hazard than an assembly use like the church.
Hey, any further questions, Tom?
Yeah. So just so I understand, you said it's voluntary. So you're saying that there is no state or city building code that would require you to make some internal changes that would be seismic proof. Is that correct?
The changes that we are making, that we are electing to build, let's say the new floor system, would have to be built to today's standard.
Okay. And
but the code doesn't, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So, and you're making those changes because you're going to take what is the shell of the building and put 14 apartment units in it. So you're going to have to do plumbing, kitchen, bath, and all that stuff. So of necessity, you'd have to build up the inside of the church. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, Aaron Turpening.
All right. Mayor, councilors, thank you for your time tonight. I'm going to try to power through a testimony here really fast. Aaron Turpening, Ward 1, Grant Neighborhood Association co-chair. The Grant Neighborhood Association, as you heard, voted 5-4 and is not against rezoning this to multifamily. We want families, we need families to be housed. As an RM2 zoned property, which is what we voted in favor of, there could be up to 9 families housed. This would help achieve the statewide planning goal 10 and help Salem meet its deficit in multifamily housing. We agree with the objective to provide more affordable housing and multifamily housing. In fact, Grant has already nearly double the population density of the rest of the city at 5,334 people per mile compared to per square mile compared to 3,661. We have no problem with low-income housing or multifamily housing, but rezoning a property is not a discussion about that. We need to decouple this decision about housing from high-rise residential. This can be multifamily housing. This can be RM2, and that would be the proper zone step from single-family housing. In fact, if this were zoned high-rise residential, you can pull up our zoning map right now, and you can pull up our Salem map, and you will see there is not a single lot in the entire city that is zoned high-rise residential that is surrounded on 3 sides by single-family residential like this is. This would be a complete one-off. It does not exist anywhere. It's not good planning practice. In fact, it is bad. It's not planning at all. And to that end, it completely undermines the process that the city is working really hard on right now in the Our Salem project, which is designing the zoning to answer questions just like this. I'm sorry, frankly, that the council's put in this position to have to reverse a planning commission decision. But that is what we would ask you to do tonight. I would also ask the city to look really hard at a way to make this work for Dev Northwest. We're not against Dev Northwest or their programs. They sound great. They haven't been great to us, but they sound great. Could we zone this as RM2 and find a way to make it work for them? I don't know if there's a way to increase the amount of units that are allowed in an RM2, but high-rise residential, as has been said many times, is a slippery slope. As an architect, I work for developers, housing providers, nonprofits. The first thing we do, we identify a property that meets the zone we need.
Thank you.
I'll stop. Sorry.
Thank you, Aaron. Any questions? Yes, Chris.
Hit the wrong button. Thank you, Mr. Turpening, for coming down. I appreciate your testimony. I want to just challenge something you just said, though. You said the city should come up with, or Dev Northwest should come up with something that accomplishes, I can't remember your exact words, but I think that they did just that with the conditions that they put in place. So we have the high-rise zoning. Hold on, let me finish my question before you tell me no. That's not cool.
I think I know where you're going, sorry.
Yeah, they put conditions on that make it exactly like the lower zone, but they put the side rails on that limit the number of units, that limit the height. It gets us to the same outcome. And I think that you're worried, and I get that. I get the worry but I don't think it's something that's going to bear out with all of the other things that they've talked about in terms of their funding. Has a lot of requirements regarding how long that they keep this property and keep it in this use. They're not going to sell it off. I just think that it's a lot of fear that's not based in fact. So go ahead.
Did you have? Is it okay that I respond? I know it's your. Do you have a?
Go ahead and respond, Aaron.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, I'm not afraid. In fact, I was on the side of the 5-4 vote that voted to support a change to RM2. The 4 votes were against zone change at all. There's been a really long and hard-fought battle in our neighborhood to save our 5 blocks by 6 blocks area that is single-family zone. The entire rest of our neighborhood is CO, CR, or overlay zones that allow basically high-rise residential effectively. I'm doing a project right now on Broadway Street that's 23 units on 0.16 acres. So, and they're all tiny units. I guess I'm not afraid of what will happen to the church. And like I said, I'm actually not afraid of 19 units. I differ a little bit from some of the folks in the neighborhood in that regard. I think 9 units would be better, but I like density. I like cities. That's why I live where I do. So I'm not afraid in that regard, but I do work for developers. I know how the process works. If an adjacent property is owned high-rise residential, it is very easy to change the next property to high-rise residential. That's the way the process works. That's the way zoning works. You look for adjacent uses. So I'm not afraid about the church. I'm afraid about, and fear is maybe not the right word. I just think it's a unnecessary precedent to set. We don't need to do this. We can find another way to do it. And so I guess, yeah, I want to reiterate that it seems like there's several minds already made up here, and that's fine. It's not going to be the end of the world. Our neighborhood will survive. But I do think that there will be consequences down the road in terms of city planning.
Councilor Lewis.
Thanks, Aaron, for coming down tonight. I want to question the idea that we're setting a precedent, the multifamily high-rise, and the concern that once you start that, it could happen just about anywhere. But I want to point out the 9 conditions that this application comes with. And I think that changes the rubber stamp idea. If someone's going to come and try to duplicate it, they're going to be looking at not only the zone change, but the conditions that came along with it. And so my question to you is, did the Grant Neighborhood Association think of any additional conditions that would have eased their concern? Or is it just, it's no good and you don't want it?
Well, I guess, I should say this is, my personal opinion is, I wouldn't say it's no good and we don't want it. I think multifamily housing and low-income housing, there's no question we need it. And so, no, we didn't think of other conditions. I guess I should only speak for myself in that regard. I think other people have maybe things like, making sure the building's preserved and those, and as well as the parsonage. But did I answer your question?
Councilor Anderson.
Thank you, and thanks for coming down, Aaron. And I have to say, I'm sorry that my alma mater thrashed your alma mater over the weekend here. But I want to talk to your experience as an architect. We've heard 9 units that could have 2 or 3 bedrooms versus 19 units that would be studio or 1 bedroom. I guess, could the development, as it stands right now, the manse and the church, could they sustain 9 multi-bedroom units, or would, in order to do that, would those buildings have to go and different type of buildings be built?
I honestly couldn't answer that question, having not, been involved in looking at the building and the project. Probably their project architect could answer that question for you.
Okay, thank you.
Aaron, I want to try a piece of math because you're an architect and know all this stuff. I don't know anything about this this issue really in terms of what's real and not real. But if you have 9 units with 2 or 3 bedrooms, it looked to me like you're serving 27, 28, 25, 28 people, whether they're children and adults or families or whatever. If you have 19 studios in 1 bedroom, you're serving 19. And I look at our goals that say we want to house people. We want this kind of affordable housing for as many people as we can get. It looks to me like a pretty inefficient use of our land, looking at this, what looks like high density. In fact, it doesn't have the kind of appropriate density that a family neighborhood offers. It is bothering me. Am I reading this wrong? And I can read it wrong. Trust me, I know that.
I probably shouldn't answer that question because I can't speak to what Dev Northwest, who they actually will serve. I get your point. It does appear that nine separate dwellings would serve more people. And
appropriately fit in that neighborhood. I mean, I know that neighborhood well enough to know it's a family neighborhood.
That is totally true, Mayor Bennett. But I will have to say that I'm proud of the fact that our neighborhood already does support a wide variety of ages and demographics, and yeah,
absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the question is, where do you support it? And do you let it erode your single family portion?
Yeah, and I would say that's maybe the issue that I see going forward in terms of developers looking at a piece of property. It's not whether this list of conditions or that list of conditions. It's the justification for changing the zoning is solely the need for housing. That's all that's cited is housing needs analysis and planning goal, statewide planning goal 10. That's basically just trumps all existing planning, and that's it. And so I don't see how that doesn't hold up going forward on other properties.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Sam Skiller.
I'm here, but the video won't start. There we go, there we go. Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. My name is Sam Skiller. I've lived for 22 years at 1255 Cottage, and I'm co-chair of the Neighborhood Association. Listening to the conversation, would we be having this conversation if this was a luxury or a market rate project? Tonight, it might sound like Grant Neighborhood is against this proposal. Actually, it's the city's very own land use code that is against this proposal. We are simply standing by the comp plan and the Grant Neighborhood Plan. Affordable housing is good, but this site is not right for the proposed use, especially with the Capitol Mall's parking nightmare right across the street. Why does Grant always have to accept parking encroachments? For years, in fact, decades, no one cared much for Grant Neighborhood. It was considered a bad, blighted area to be avoided. As neighbors, we banded together with our schools, churches, nonprofits, and businesses to build a diverse, healthy neighborhood. And we did it by playing within the land use rules. In Grant, we are in favor of development, including high density and affordable housing. It just needs to go where it's supposed to go. Our positive posture toward community development is evident in all corners of Grant. North Broadway is a shining example, and there's a half a dozen new projects underway that we recently approved. We have but one request. Let's get to yes together. That has not happened in this case. It stands in stark contrast to the developers who have honored the land use code and us as neighbors, even as they pursued their goals. Both sides being flexible, working the process, and together forging a positive outcome. Dev Northwest ignored the council's admonition to work with us. As already highlighted, cramming high-rise residential onto the corner of D and Cottage will set a zoning precedent that gets exploited in other neighborhoods. We're having a really hard time understanding why the city staff is so ardently pushing this particular rezone issue. Because it's affordable housing? We love affordable housing. It's not the issue, it's a zoning issue. Is it community pressure? If it were a high-end or a market rate project, would we be having this conversation? Would the city be so insistent? The staff's unyielding support for the Dev Northwest proposal creates the impression of favoritism for nonprofit developers. Are you treating for-profit developers the same? After tonight, will the rules be the same for for-profit and nonprofit developers? So on both issues, precedent and bias, the donut hole approach will become a Pandora's box for the staff and the council for a long time to come. I'm astonished that the precedent issue keeps getting shrugged off tonight. I don't understand that. As you have heard, we tried to work with Dev Northwest to accept RN2 zoning. Despite their claims, they have not come our way on anything. They just keep insisting that they're right and we are wrong. In fact, they've been rather condescending toward us. They are professionals. They do this 24 hours a day. We're volunteers.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you for hearing our appeal tonight.
Thank you.
We love Grant Neighborhood.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Sam? Okay, Nick Belichick. I'm sure that's wrong, but Nick.
Thank you, Mayor Bennett and council members. My name is Nick Belichick. I live in Ward 1, about 2 blocks away from the property being discussed. I'm passionately neutral on the outcome tonight, but when there's a project-based spot rezoning proposed in my neighborhood, I'm gonna take notice. I just want to share a few thoughts that I have that may not be brought up tonight by people who support or are against the Planning Commission's decision. And these have to do with transparency, neighborhood affordability, if the rezone is successful, and fairness. So first on transparency, a lot of support for this rezone is based on suggestions that it will create affordable family housing and reduce houselessness. But as confirmed by the developers earlier tonight, they don't know who will live there. They won't say who will even be allowed to live there. For all we know, it could be exclusionary housing, much like a college fraternity that doesn't increase affordable housing in the neighborhood. We just don't know. It's not guaranteed through this rezone, but this is a story that the developers are using to lobby for support. In fact, once these lots are rezoned to residential high-rise housing, future landlords can do almost whatever they want with the lots, including building their own mini luxury condos, if they want. High-rise housing is not synonymous with affordable housing and shouldn't be presented to the council as such. Second, affordability in Grant. One of the reasons that rents in Grant neighborhood are affordable right now is that there's really nothing else property owners can do with the houses. This low cost of housing is one of the many things that makes the Grant neighborhood great. However, allowing developers to rezone to residential high-rise simply by saying, without proof, I'm creating affordable housing, allows for all sorts of interesting possibilities for neighborhood landlords and property owners. Their property is suddenly worth so much more. They can start evicting renters, demolishing current housing, building high-rise housing like we see in Portland, Seattle. It'll come to a Grant neighborhood if allowed. Finally, fairness. If this property can be so easily rezoned to residential high-rise, can we do that with my house too? Like, I'm serious. I think it meets or exceeds all the criteria outlined in the commission's notice of decision. I'm sure most of the properties in the Grant neighborhood will be worth a lot more if we can convert them to high-rise housing. So I hope the Planning Commission's decision in making procedures on zoning I hope they're fair and they allow opportunities for everyone in the neighborhood, not just spot rezoning for organizations that have the right connections and big city lawyers. Those are my thoughts. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Nick, very much. Any questions? Mark DeCourcy.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Mark DeCourcy. I live at 740 Shipping Street, Northeast in the Grant neighborhood. I don't know whether I have mute and stop video turned off, but I don't know what's going on.
You're doing great.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
As described to the City Council, this project is actually preposterous. FEMA requires that all masonry construction west of the Rocky Mountains must be steel reinforced against earthquakes. I have that in Exhibit A that I provided with a written transcript. This project would be a major renovation and must satisfy all standards for new construction. This rezoning application is based in part on a site plan produced for the application. The site plan, which includes the renovation of the 1928 masonry church for reuse as an apartment house, is based in part on engineering and architectural drawings in the application. Those drawings are not stamped by professionals who drew them in violation of Oregon law. So they're just drawings. The engineers and architects who produced those drawings did not stamp them for a very good reason. The masonry and foundation is not reinforced for earthquakes, and Dev Northwest has no plans or budget to reinforce it, as shown by the note listing the major work to be done. And also Joseph Moore did not, he more or less said that they're not going to reinforce the masonry, which is not going to go well. Another note on the drawing states the work is speculative and based on aerial photographs. And this is what it says. Note, information is approximate and compiled from aerial views, tax maps, and minimal site observation. Dimensions and locations of existing items are approximate. In short, those drawings are worthless for the purpose intended. Dev Northwest represents that the purpose of this project is to provide affordable housing, but the cost is far from affordable, costing as much as $250,000 per unit to build these things. Even without the reinforcement, each unit will cost more to build than many of the single-family residences already in the neighborhood. With reinforcement, they will be in the luxury apartment price range. Dev Northwest included in the application comments from local residents, some of whom approved the project. But those comments were addressed to a different project and a different zoning, which all changed with the revised application in July. Dev Northwest indicates in its webpage that its corporate goal is to fight racism. The demographics for Grant Community Schools show that Grant is already a heavily integrated neighborhood with 40% white students and 52% Hispanic, and other races making up the rest. Grant is already the ideal integrated neighborhood that Dev Northwest claims it is trying to create. Grant does not need to be destroyed or fixed.
Thank you, Mr. DeCourcy, very much. Appreciate it. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, thank you. Douglas Kumanoff.
Hello, is it working now?
It is.
Hi, thank you, Mayor, City Council. My name is Douglas Kuzmanoff, and I've lived in Grant neighborhood for 7 years. I own a house within very, very close proximity to Evergreen Church. When I first moved to Salem, an important criteria for housing was finding a place with historic qualities. What ensued was an arduous search for houses and apartment buildings that maintained their charm, charisma, and beauty. This proved challenging. Through countless Craigslist pages of gutted and gaudily carpeted rehab buildings with unkempt vinyl sidings, what I was looking for appeared to be greatly lacking in Salem. Through my search, I was able to discover the Grant neighborhood, a beautiful oasis of historic craftsmen and personable neighbors who have a genuine love of community and preservation. I enjoyed Grant so much that after 4 years of living in the neighborhood, I purchased a property not far from my rental. When I was made aware of the basics of the Evergreen project, I was ecstatic. Salem needs more affordable housing, and a rehab church would be a fantastic candidate. After doing more research on the proposal as well as the go-ahead from the Planning Commission, I became dismayed. The number of units they are proposing does not seem appropriate for the current building size, coupled with an inability to provide realistic accommodations to the tenants who will live there. My main concern is that the building will inevitably be demolished and replaced with an oversized structure that will more than likely not be offered to the population it was intended to serve. Approving this project would open the door for inappropriate rezoning and unnecessarily increased developments in our historic neighborhood. It is agreed that affordable housing is needed in Salem, which is already available in Grant. Increasing this number through the possible demolition of historic buildings is not the correct way to improve our city and our neighborhood. While the developers may claim they will act in good faith, they have shown contrary thus far. So let's see that in writing. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Kuzminoff? All right, and now Jennifer Rager, you as applicant have 5 minutes to rebut.
Thank you. There's been a lot of testimony this evening. I will try my best to keep it at 5 minutes, but I hope you'll give me the benefit of the doubt because we'd really like to reach a decision tonight. And
5 minutes.
Mr. Mayor, if I can interrupt Jennifer just a moment. We usually do questions of staff before we have applicants rebuttal.
Okay, I'm sorry, I apologize. Okay.
All right.
Okay, any questions for Olivia? Virginia.
Thank you. I just had a quick question about why in the conditions that the height was chosen for 50 feet and not the existing 30.
The 50 feet is what the RM2 zone allows. So we tried to mimic the RM2 zone outside of the density.
Okay, thank you. And also, was there any consideration for including any kind of improvements to D Street and Cottage, that intersection there for pedestrian use? And was any of that considered?
Because they're remodeling the existing structures, I don't think that Public Works, the code allowed for improvements of that. There is some conditions around sidewalks and ADA upgrades that are required to happen at the intersections, I believe.
Okay, and then one last question for you. Was there ever any conversation about adding a condition of keeping that historic building as just listed on there as one of the conditions?
So it's not designated in our code. But it's going through the SHPO process. So there wasn't a condition that staff could place to say you couldn't demolish a structure unless it's listed under the historic code.
Okay, thank you.
Olivia, why isn't this this approach showing up in our Salem, in the new comprehensive plan? We have the old comprehensive plan continues, as we heard over and over, the single family. Our Salem contemplates single family in that small neighborhood. What's going on? Why aren't you planners consistent saying we're gonna move forward with these more higher density uses in these close-in neighborhoods, both south and north?
So I would maybe defer that to Lisa, but I know that I've been talking to Eunice, and a lot of the applications that were in at the time of the vision that they decided not to change those properties necessarily since there was active applications in. This application's been in for quite a while.
I'm kind of confused because it shows it occurs in this one neighborhood, but I thought the testimony I heard indicated this is going to be something we're going to see south of Bush Park, in Nob Hill, in all kinds of different areas where it would be really nice to have these high rises on the hill or anywhere else besides Grant neighborhood, along with Grant neighborhood.
I'm not directly involved in the Our Salem project. I do know that the new House bill will account for putting probably fourplexes on most of the properties in the Grant.
This isn't a fourplex. This is a high density high rise. Well, and I'm trying to understand where you're thinking these are going to go now with this kind of precedent being developed.
So the Planning Commission made the decision that the RM2 zone, what would have been equal or better, the density was the only thing that was different than the RM2 zone. So unfortunately, our code doesn't allow us to take an adjustment to a density standard, and that was why the applicant chose to go to the residential high density, which just is a higher density residential zone.
Right.
We are limiting the. The height is limited with the conditions. The lot coverage is actually more restrictive than the RS zone. The screening standards are more restrictive than the RS zone. If there's concern about the high rise, I would recommend the condition being changed to 35 feet, which is the height of the single family zone and the existing structure.
Can it be changed? Can we do that tonight, a 35 foot?
Yes.
35-foot height as a condition?
Yes.
Yeah, I do think we will get to talk about this with the folks doing our Salem, because clearly this appears to be the direction we're headed. So it'll be interesting to see how people respond to what this looks like in their neighborhood.
Mayor Bennett, can I respond to that, please?
Yes, Lisa.
Okay, thanks.
But I wondered if you were there.
No, I'm here. Well, Olivia was doing a really good job. Hi, I'm Lisa Anderson Ogilvie. I'm your planning administrator. I am working on our Salem with Eunice and also this project, so I'll be happy to address that. We're not proposing through our Salem to apply the RH zone anywhere. We haven't identified any properties to apply the RH zone, and the reason is that we instead are thinking about changing the zone and renaming it and bringing in a height limitation and creating maybe like an RM3 zone, so a higher density zone that actually does have a height limitation and has a max of units, because we do identify that there's a deficit. We have the RM1, which is a low density. We have our RM2, which is a fairly high density, but we don't have an option for people if it makes sense to go any higher than that. Instead, we have mixed use zones that don't limit the density, or downtown where there's no limit on your multifamily density and no limit on your height. So the testimony about, we may be expanding RH zoning and picking other neighborhoods, that's not our intent. We're not doing that. We do hopefully plan to create an RM3 zone that may be applied, around town in appropriate locations that would replace this RH zone in the future. Olivia, I think, was accurate in saying that just because somebody has an application in doesn't mean we went and changed it on the map, but it also doesn't mean that it would be in conflict with proposed our Salem plan. So, the map was made a while ago and presented to the council. As I said in conversations with some of you, we say, oh, we're going to change this land to something. And then I have to call Eunice and say, somebody came in for an application for something else, take it off the map, or call them and try to change their mind. Land is developing every day. We're really busy. Lots of applications come in and we respond to those, and we have to under the criteria, but they don't necessarily reflect what's on the map, at any given moment. So I don't see that there's a huge conflict in the fact that it's not currently on the proposed.
Should we be holding off on this, waiting for you to bring us that change in the code, or is that too far off?
I think that's too far off. And again, we tried to, with the conditions, to mimic the zone that we keep hearing would be appropriate, the RM2. As Olivia said, we did pick 50 feet just to match that zone, but 35 feet, unless the applicant objects, or maybe even if they do, that's up to the council, might be more appropriate height restriction to alleviate some of those concerns.
So the 35 feet is doable as a condition?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Councilor Hoy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Anderson Ogilvie, for being here. I think this question is most appropriately for you. We have it's been suggested by a number of people tonight that if we approve this, then this sort of zone change is going to march throughout the neighborhood, and we won't have any option but to make these changes anytime somebody asks. Can you address that for me? Because I don't have that same opinion, but you're the expert in the area, and I would like to hear your opinion on that.
Sure. I won't disagree that when someone comes in and they ask for a new zone, the first thing we do is we look at the map and see what zones are around it. And if they're surrounded or next to that same zone, then that makes it easier to envision that their application might be approved. However, every application is reviewed on the merits of that application. They all have to meet the criteria and go through the process. And just being next to a similar zone is not always a good enough reason to change the zone. Most of the property that they're talking about are single family dwellings. One of these two properties is a church. It's not a residential use. It's not a single family, at this time. If these were just two houses, two single family dwellings, and they came in and said, we just want to change these two single family dwellings to residential high rise, our response would have been, no, that doesn't make any sense. But the adaptive reuse of a church coupled with the parsonage that goes with that property, is being sold with that property, makes more sense in light of the, you know, locational requirements that we look at for citing multifamily. So no, I wouldn't agree with that you'd have no discretion or that staff would automatically recommend approval of RH for the whole neighborhood.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else, Councilor Lewis?
Thanks, Lisa. I want to talk just a minute about the idea of limiting this application to 35 feet, which is the height of the existing building. You know, it sounds like an additional requirement that would make a lot of sense. And I'm surprised that it didn't come up in the Planning Commission or in the conversations. So explain to me, did it ever come up, limiting the height to 35 feet?
I don't think so. You know, I appreciate your question. You asked earlier if the neighborhood association thought about bringing proposed conditions forward. We didn't hear any proposed conditions from them. We did meet with them. Olivia and I met with the grant subcommittee to talk through this application. We did recommend that if there were conditions that they would be in favor of, that it would be good to bring those forward for consideration. We didn't hear that. We picked 50 feet again to try to mimic the RM2 zone. And I don't, unless Olivia is saying different, which I see her shaking her head, no, nobody's proposed any lower height as a condition.
Yeah, and my other question is, under the RM2, under the scenario that the building collapses, under the RM2 zone, then it could be built to 50 feet in height.
Correct.
Okay.
RM2 or?
In RM2, if they just asked to go to RM2 and then the building, for example, fell down, the height would be 50 feet unless it was limited to something lower.
Okay, good. Well, okay, I'm sorry, go ahead, Tom.
Okay, thanks. Very interesting discussion from all parts here. I had the question about the 35-foot limit, but I've got another question. I think this is directed more to the city attorney. Could there also be a condition that deals somehow with the crosswalk concerns? The neighbors are saying it's tough to get across D Street. I know that. I also understand you're coming down Church Street and you take a turn right there and you just, go through. So is that any possibility to put something like that on another condition, like the applicant shall install crosswalks across D Street in conjunction with the city staff, or some wording like that?
I will defer a little bit to Public Works staff. I believe there was a transportation analysis provided as part of the application. And we can only impose those sorts of conditions if there's certain warrants based on the traffic counts that are involved. Given that this was a church use versus the apartments, I don't know where the traffic counts came out and whether anything like that would be warranted, but we can't impose a greater burden on the property than is warranted by the traffic information.
I'd love to hear what Public Works has to say, but I also am thinking of that young girl who got killed down on Commercial on Ravon. All of a sudden, we put in a crosswalk there, and I know we also did it for the ESD out on Pringle Road going out that way. And maybe there was
term there, Councilor, as we did.
Okay.
Oh. Well, Lisa or Olivia, either of you, one of the questions I've got, are there other conditions we should be thinking of? I mean, I'm listening carefully to what people are saying, and certainly the height comes right to the top, is put that 35 feet on, in my mind. Were there other things that come to mind? I'm very concerned about trying to do this during a meeting like this and not having some time to think it through and work with staff thinking about what are some other conditions that would appropriately respond, at least in part, to the neighborhood and to the needs of the city. Does that make sense?
I think we propose the conditions that we could think of. I think the conditions that, that are proposed are what we think are appropriate, unless Olivia has anything else. I think Olivia might have something to say about the crosswalks as well.
The 35 feet didn't show up.
What we heard from the neighborhood was that the RM2 zone was something that they would be interested in, and so that was the direction that we went with the with the conditions because of the RM2 zone. So there wasn't any 35 feet or the existing height wasn't something we were looking directly at the RM2 zone.
I get it.
I do have an email from Julie Warnicki about the sidewalks, just like noting, and I think we sent this on to Grant, that they can request additional improvements through our Safer Pedestrian Crossing program. And because there's not a signal, we don't typically make a lot of additional enhancements like medians and such. And so I think that would be something that the traffic engineer would want to look at through that Safer Pedestrian Crossing program. The TPR, you're right, didn't trigger anything that would allow us to condition street improvements.
Any others? Yes, Virginia.
Just a follow-up question. If it went ahead and it was zoned as, oh Lord, now I'm all mixed up, residential high-rise, and then we came up with an RN3, would that mean that then would be rezoned to fit the RN3, or would it stay a residential high-rise?
I believe through our Salem, if they decide to change the residential high-rise to RM3, it would change to RM3 because they're looking at getting rid of RH zone altogether.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah, it hasn't been decided, so we could keep the RH zone and then just pick certain properties that would make sense to go to the R3, whether that's new properties or properties that are RH. So we're a little early in that because at the R Salem level, we're just still looking at the broad policies and comprehensive plan designations, and that's more of an implementing zone. So we'll get to it a little bit later next year. It's still in the idea formation process, and I know Eunice is watching and listening and taking notes. So we'll work on it. And the thing is, when you change somebody's zone, like if we were to change it to a new R3 zone, for example, it would wipe out the conditions that were placed through this zone change. So we really want to be careful when creating a new zone and applying it to property that we aren't getting rid of some sort of condition that came out of a public process that's still needed. So we'd have to look at it closely.
Virginia.
Thank you. I just had one more question. I was looking over my notes here about the different things that the neighborhood has asked for. And there was a question about some fencing that was between the parsonage and the neighbors to the north. Do you know anything about that? Could you speak to that at all?
They're meeting a standard by having that fencing there. I know that the developer and that property owner have been in discussions about that fencing. There hasn't been a request to change that, and I'm not sure. I haven't heard anything since the new hearings process started about any concerns about that since this process started. So I know that they've been talking about it and discussing what it's going to look like.
Great, thank you so much.
Councilor Nordyke.
Thank you. The Planning Commission findings talk about historical value for buildings, and it states that the project is maintaining the historical character of the building while achieving needed housing development through reuse and repurpose of the existing church. What assurances do we have that they will, in fact, maintain the historical character of the building?
Right.
So one of the conditions and part of the federal funding requires that they go through the SHPO process. So the historic board, they're actually going to be needing to go to our HLC for mitigation for the things that they are changing. And so HLC would make a determination on what mitigation is needed to mitigate those effects. But that's all through the state and federal process, and it's not contained within the city code. So they're going to have to do that process regardless, like Jennifer said, of the condition because of the federal funding that they have.
Great, thank you. And one follow-up. There are a lot of conditions that have been put on this particular property that are really, in my opinion, going above and beyond and creating more of a custom fit approach to both the location, the character, the neighborhood, and this and that. One of the other conditions that as we have all discussed, is that the building and the property itself shall be limited to 19 units. So if they were to ever want to increase the number of units, they would have to restart the whole process, correct?
They would need to take they would apply for a variance to change that condition.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further.
Sir Anderson.
Thanks. I want to follow up on two things. One is the funding. There was some discussion of potential city funding. That's not really, doesn't have anything to do with the application now. In fact, that was part of the council saying we don't want to apply for community development block grant funds for this. So there's no part of this plan that would end up with the city providing any funding.
I think I would allow Jennifer to answer that question. I'm not 100% sure if maybe Jennifer or Shelley would want to answer that question. Okay.
Not to put Director Rutherford on the spot, but she is in attendance today.
Here.
I think Shelley's here also.
I was trying to put myself on the spot, but I was still muted. Yes, Kristen Rutherford, Urban Development Director, and we do have the capacity to bring forward an amendment to our annual action plan to restore the grant that was previously proposed for award.
Okay. But there are not any current plans to do that.
No, they're not.
In other words, Dev Northwest is a worst case scenario for them. They're prepared to move forward with funding other than the city funding.
I believe that there would be a need for our funding to move forward with this, and we would be prepared to bring that back as quickly as possible.
All right. Then the other thing is thank you very much, Director Rutherford. This is more back now for the planning department and I don't know, maybe Public Works. I still don't feel like I've got a real hold on what's going to happen on the interior of the church. Is it fact, Mr. DeCourcy raised a lot of issues about this, and I don't know whether there's any validity to that, but what is going to be required inside, and we're going to have to, it's just going to be going through like getting a building permit like any other development, or how does that work?
Yes, like any other development, they'll need to go through the Building and Safety Division and meet Oregon State building codes.
Okay. And right now that there's no engineer stamps and all that other kind of stuff because we're still in the preliminary phase.
We never have stamped plans at land use.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Good. Lucky you. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Let's give Jennifer a chance to try to rebut all this. Dan, can we give her some extra time?
That's fine, Mayor. You're welcome to do that. Let us know up front, though, so we can time it accordingly.
Yeah, Jennifer, would 2-3 minutes be okay?
Yeah, why don't we say 3, and I'll keep it as short as I can.
Okay, great. Thank you.
That would be a total of 8 minutes.
8 minutes. Okay.
Okay, so the more impactful the change, the higher the burden is a standard in your code, but it's not clear and objective, and it's really unclear to the developer what this means. But what is clear is that there are different meanings, and that the Grant Neighborhood Association and the applicant have different opinions about that. The applicant's opinion is that it is proposing to adaptively reuse existing structures, and that it has met its burden to address all of the criteria and standards that apply in this case. The primary opponent focuses on parking, but this is misplaced because there is no minimum parking for multifamily housing. The city has made a policy decision that housing people is more important than housing cars. Further, it identifies a failure to recognize that Dev Northwest is providing affordable housing to people that are rent burdened and worried about putting food on their table. The applicant challenges GNA's assumption of 30 automobiles at this development and shows that the appeal lacks perspective and empathy for the very real financial circumstances of future residents for whom proximity to public transit is key as compared to on-site parking spaces. In relation to the applicant's concern about applying the standards and criteria that apply to this application, the applicant takes to heart the mayor's statement that only the standards and criteria in this application apply. Since no other council member responded, I take others' silence on a Zoom meeting to reflect silent agreement with the mayor. There's a lot of talk about the Salem plan. It is not an applicable standard and criteria. As the planning director stated, there's, they're early in the process. There's a lot of conversations that are happening. But what did happen is, as Commissioner Hoy pointed out, the applicant was responsive to earlier comments by both the neighborhood and council members. And one council member during the hearing back in June said, I'd be, and I think with every other councilor, very excited about getting 14 units of affordable housing in a neighborhood, but getting 14 units of housing and a commercial office that is regional in nature is just one step beyond than what I can support. And so now, without that office, there are still 14 units of affordable housing in the church building. And now there are 5 units proposed in the parsonage as well. Any other zone change on any other property will be subject to its own review and is not the issue. So we really don't see this as a sky is falling approach. Because this really is about affordable housing. It's not about a for-profit developer. It's not about putting money in people's pocketbooks, except for the residents who will have a stable housing. The current applications were made under pathways allowed in the current code. The public meeting and open house requirements were met, and the applicant attended additional meetings in July 2020, as well as left their door open to answering questions by email and other means. But there is no requirement that the applicant fit its applications to the narrow construct and reduced unit count that seems to be GNA's preferred outcome. The site has limited space. Once you turn it into multifamily, the open space requirements change so that it could trigger requirements like playgrounds and community rooms, which are not possible to build on such a small site. Dev Northwest looked at this as the best way to maximize housing while preserving the building by using smaller units. As to the council's discussion about height limits, Councilor Nordicky, sorry, pronunciation there, had a good point that, trying to narrow this development even more through conditions is difficult, but if there is going to be a height limit, then Dev Northwest would ask that it be 40 feet instead of 35, just in case there's mechanical stuff that needs to change or something that we don't anticipate right now. As just said, the building inspector is going to look all the building permit plans over, and so we need a little flexibility there, but prefer to have the 50-foot as consistent with the original concerns that were about the RM2 zoning. There's a huge need for smaller units, which rarely get built with public subsidy. And I want to point out that there's absolutely nothing that prevents a single parent and child from living in an SRO. I've been to tiny home conferences where entire families fit into a 250 square foot space because any housing is better than no housing. The affordable housing emergency has been simmering across the state and in Salem for years now. And now more than ever, with disparate impacts to our lowest income residents as a result of COVID-19 and the public health crisis, as well as wildfire displacement of thousands of people, the applicant asks you to approve this proposal for 19 units to begin to provide this much needed housing option. If there are particular points that were raised that council members have questions about, we're available, I'm available, Emily's here, Joe's still on the line, and Aaron as well, if necessary. So thank you. We ask that you approve this development tonight because the need is so great.
Thank you. All right. Did you want to ask a question, Councilor Hoy? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Ms. Brager, for your additional testimony. So I just wanted to confirm, what I heard you say was that you would be okay if we amended the height to 40 feet. Is that correct?
Only if it's absolutely necessary. I mean, 50 feet, you have these, you have a zone that everyone said they wanted, and we couldn't do it because we need more units based on this application. But in all other respects, we match a zone that everyone was okay with. And so it's unclear why that's changed. So, but if the council needs to change the height, then 40 feet.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I'll just save it at that.
Yeah. Councilor Lewis.
Yes, this question I think is for Ms. Ryman, if I could. And Jennifer mentioned, why not the multi-bedroom units? And if I understand correctly, because the site would require more open space, things like playgrounds. And is that what led to the decision, or the main thing that led to the decision to do the single bedroom units?
Sure. Thanks for the question, Councilor. I think it was a combination of factors. As Aaron said earlier, we look at a whole host of criteria and evaluation measures when we're trying to figure out what's going to make a project work. The size of the lot was certainly one piece of that. We develop a lot of family housing, and when we do that, we typically try to develop it in a way where there are playgrounds and there are community rooms so that we can host kids' activities in the summertime and things like that. And this site just didn't present that opportunity. I think we also heard loud and clear from early on that the neighborhood wanted to preserve the buildings themselves. And so in order to do that, the space inside the building, just the configuration of the number of square feet per floor, made it easier for us to fit smaller units in and maximize that space and maximize the number of families that we could serve. And finally, the location near a lot of services that would be good for elderly or veterans or some of the populations that need smaller units, I think made it attractive for the smaller configuration as well. And then actually I would add one more, which is, as Jennifer noted, smaller units are actually more expensive per square foot to build. And so new construction oftentimes leans toward larger units. This, because it's a retrofit, gives us an opportunity to produce smaller units in a way that actually does pencil and that could be attractive for state funding. And so it was no one factor in particular that led us to decide on the smaller unit configuration. It was the fact that a lot of what we were looking at seemed to be leaning in that direction and made it a better project for the studios and one bedrooms.
And just a comment, this goes back 30 years when Corvallis Neighborhood Housing first got started. Proud of being one of the founding members of that. It's my understanding that the goal is to develop as many units as possible based on the circumstances. And in this case, you're kind of stuck with what you can do and what you can't do.
Certainly the housing crisis is such that we want to try to maximize what a given property or what a given building can reasonably fit. And I think in this case, 19 units is serving Salem better than the fewer units that we could have fit under RM2.
Virginia.
Thank you. Just a follow up to that, would the 9 units be financially viable for you? Would that pencil out for you financially?
No, there's not a path forward that we can see given the funding sources that we believe will become available in the next year to 3 years. It's looking like the smaller units and the higher number is what we're going to need to pencil.
Okay, thank you.
Have you factored in city participation with you on the 9 units?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
And on the 19?
Yeah, for sure. It's the only reason we're able to look at a project at all in Salem is because of the city's commitment of funding. So the home and CDBG dollars are really crucial in any project that we're considering. So kudos to the city for the effort they have put into those funding sources and making them available for affordable housing development.
Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. And Councilor Hoyd, you want to start us off?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the City Council affirm the Planning Commission's decision for Comprehensive Plan Map Designation neighborhood plan change, zone change, class 3 site plan review, class 1 design review, and class 2 adjustments case number CPC, NPC, ZC, SPR, ADJ, DR 20-03 with an amendment to the condition to limit the height to 40 feet.
Second.
Second by who?
Lewis.
It's okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I came at this project with a skeptical eye. And I had a conversation with staff, specifically Lisa Anderson Ogilvie, where she walked me through the process where I believe the staff threaded the needle to get us to a place that met the neighborhood concerns to a very high degree and met the developer's need in order to have a viable project. And I really feel like this does that. I understand the fears. I think that they are mostly unfounded, but I do understand them and I hear them. And I think this is a good project. We need more housing. We need more affordable housing. We need more housing for single people or for small families. We need all sorts of housing. And this is a unique project that we have very few of in Salem. And I think this will be a strong addition to our community, and I strongly support it.
Councilor Nordyke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The city housing needs analysis shows that we have a deficit of nearly 3,000 units for multifamily housing. We have heard reports from a variety of people this evening, and I appreciate everyone who came to testify today. I appreciate everyone who put the thought and time into this project. I note with interest the number of letters that we received from our partners in reducing homelessness in our community. Northwest Human Services, Community Action, Family Promise, Habitat for Humanity, all of them writing in letters of support, all of them underscoring the housing crisis that we have, the affordable housing crisis we have, and the homelessness crisis we have. We know from past council meetings that the city of Salem, the people of Salem have made it loud and clear that they want us to address homelessness above all else. That is their number one priority for us above all else. And there is no close second. This is a project that helps us take at least 19 individuals off the street. In addition to all of that, I note that the grant community is not unanimous. The grant residents are not unanimous. The neighborhood association is not unanimous. We received a variety of pieces of information from these folks from across that neighborhood and the Can-Do neighborhood. And as I have already suggested, I'm quite taken with a lot of the conditions that they've added to this project to demonstrate a responsiveness. They have not met every single wish list item that they would like, but those conditions make clear that this building will be limited in how it is used, very limited in how it is used. It shall be limited to 19 units. It shall be limited to 40 feet, perhaps. It shall preserve the existing facade. It shall reuse the church building and parsonage to allow the exterior character of that building to remain as it should be. Lastly, each application that comes before us should be reviewed on the merits. Each application is subject to the same public hearing project. I review each project on its own merits. And every time a project comes to me, I will consider it carefully, just as I have tonight. So while I understand the slippery slope arguments, I review each project on the merits, and so do our city staff, as they indicated in response to Councilor Hoyt's questions. I'm ready to vote.
Councilor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with the comments expressed by my fellow councilors. I just want to add a couple things. First of all, lawyers, we like to use the word slippery slope all the time. And I understand the fear and concern about that. But in this case, I think they're misplaced for what Councilor Nordyke said and for also what Lisa Anderson Ogilvie said. And I also don't agree quite with the donut hole argument that has been raised, because if you look at it, there's not a donut. The south side of it doesn't make up the donut here. I may have been the counselor at the meeting when we considered the CBD block grant, who made the comment about no commercial. And that was my concern at that meeting, was that I and the other counselors didn't want commercial zoning to extend into a residential zoning. And Dev Northwest heard what we said, and they responded to that. I also am familiar with NEDCO from my 30 years of living in Eugene, and so I see that this company this NGO has a good track record and has been around for a long time. And the final thing I'd say is that the building is being retained, and that is something that helps me come to the conclusion that this is a motion that I can support.
Councilor Lewis?
Yeah, a couple of things, and I'll use the term slippery slope if I have to. We heard from the neighbors the concern, and what I heard the most was, you never know. You never know. That's why it's slippery. My contention is now, if there's a developer or a property owner that wants to use the high-rise zone, they need to pay attention and listen to this conversation over the last 2 hours before they jump into that pool.
Okay, anyone else?
Yes, I would just like to say that I know I was the one yay vote last time, and I do regret that we don't have the services, the wraparound services that would have been in that original proposal, but I'm glad that the Dev Northwest was able to bring back a proposal that met what constraints that we put on them to allow more housing in this area. We have an urgent need, and while I'm not necessarily don't necessarily think it's fair to oppose a restriction of 40 feet that we don't on other RM2 housing units in that area, which is the zone that the appellant said that they wanted to meet, since it seems to be the general consensus and Dev Northwest isn't objecting strenuously. I guess I will support the motion for sure, but I do think that the proposal is good to get more affordable housing downtown where we need it, and an area where there are transportation and other services available.
Anyone else?
I have to echo some of the things that Councilor Alsick had mentioned, specifically that the work that that's being done, and we also recognize that we need to have more housing that's affordable for a community. And I also agree with what other councilors have mentioned about making the amendment to reduce height. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
There you are. Councilor Yankee?
Yeah, just a quick follow, and I agree with most of the comments that have been out there. Councilor Lewis' comment regarding anyone who's considering the RMH to listen to these last couple hours. That is significant, because I'll throw in slippery slope as well, just because I can. And then Councilor Anderson and my wards down in, the 12th and 13th Street, there was a lot of rezoning taking place for medical facilities as well. And the neighbors had significant concerns on that. And so I am not without compassion for the argument that once, a residential high-rise zone crosses a street, even though this is, a creative adaptation to reuse an existing facility, it is truly unique. But we still need to be concerned about the potential for someone that, as, Lisa mentioned, they look at the map and see what's next door to it. So do not underestimate the potential for someone to come in and try to rezone based on that. And so I would urge, future counselors to keep that in mind as well.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm going to be the sole no vote. I represented this area for 9 years. I know how hard and how difficult it is to maintain a small affordable single-family neighborhood. And Grant Neighborhood Association has done a mighty good job of doing that, despite all kinds of councils that come and go. But I think to come across D Street is to open that neighborhood up for a real potential of losing it. And I think I mentioned, I saw it happen over the years downtown as Victorian homes were moved out and high rises or not high rises went into their place. That whole Grant neighborhood, a big chunk of it, and this sort of can-do neighborhood lost house after house after house to a variety of developments. The only one that seems to have been sympathetic was Liberty Street, where they tried to preserve the houses and they've still lost houses. I continue to believe that our affordable, close-in neighborhoods that are devoted to families is something we need in Salem. It's a kind of housing that meets, if we need housing for a variety of needs, neighborhoods like Nin and Grant and Highland, Can-Do, even parts of Scan are really what we need to keep preserving. And I think this is the first step down the road. And I'll talk about slippery slope too. When I was on the Planning Commission years ago, I voted against the rezoning of that PAC trust property because I thought it was the wrong use and that I thought there might be a slippery slope there, and watched as you all and some of your predecessors tried to kill the development of that property despite the fact it had appropriate zoning. And then complained that previous councils set this up. And I am concerned, listening to the discussion of parking, that we have made that mistake again on this no parking at dense housing developments, no parking requirement. I think this could have been resolved with more time and more consultation with the neighborhood. I know this neighborhood very well, and they have worked hard over the years to be as inclusive and as inviting as any neighborhood in this town. And all you have to do is, if you take a look at a map of the neighborhood, see the various types of development that have been regularly supported by this neighborhood, but also the focus on trying to maintain that core single family area that is served so well by those schools. I'm also not convinced by the discussion of 19 units versus 14 units or 9 units. I'm just not convinced that this is the right project for that location. I think this is a family area that we have a huge number of families that are homeless. I don't think we're taking care of them. I don't think we're offering them the kind of housing they need. And this had all the potential to do that. And then to learn that we're looking at investing city money in this makes me increasingly uncomfortable that we haven't looked at this closely enough. And I hope in the future we'll look very closely at these kinds of issues. But at this point, I'm just a no vote on this. So we'll call a vote, call a roll.
Councillor Anderson.
Aye.
Councillor Nanke.
Aye.
Councillor Leung.
Aye.
Councillor Ossick.
Aye.
Councillor Hoy.
Aye.
Councillor Nordyke.
Aye.
Councillor Lewis.
Aye.
Mayor Bennett.
No. Motion passes. Councillor Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that we extend our meeting for 15 minutes.
Second.
I'd like to make a point of order.
Now, no, not right now. Thank you for coming. Yeah, let's do a vote real quickly on extend for 15 minutes.
Councillor Nanke.
Aye.
Councillor Leung.
Aye.
Councillor Ossick.
Maybe? Sorry.
Maybe.
Councillor Hoy.
Aye.
Councillor Nordyke.
Aye.
Counselor Lewis,
Sure.
Counselor Anderson,
Why not?
Mayor Bennett.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Okay, we'll move along then to the information report. Anybody got any questions or need some information on any of this? Okay, no first readings. We have a second reading.
Ordinance Bill number 1320, an ordinance relating to the Public Art Trust Fund, amending SRC 15.030, amending the Salem Public Art Commission Public Art Collection Guidelines, Policies, and Procedures. Counselor Leung.
Aye.
Counselor Ossick.
Aye.
Counselor Hoy.
Aye.
Counselor Nordike.
Aye.
Counselor Lewis.
Aye.
Counselor Anderson.
Aye.
Counselor Nanke.
Aye.
Mayor Bennett.
Aye. Motion passes, or the ordinance passes. That's it.
Didn't even need the extension.
No, we didn't.
We're voting no.
Thank you. We're adjourned.
Have a great night.